Serafina's povey. The fog thickened as we pressed deeper into the misty woods, clinging to my hair and saturating my clothes until every step felt heavier than the last. My lungs drew in air that should have burned or muddied my senses, but the fog slid past me like it didn't quite know what to do with someone who was half empty. No wolf to drown, no heightened senses to dull, just me, raw and bare. Take that, fate. Unfortunately, the others weren't so lucky. As harmless as it had been at first, the longer we stayed in the fog, the more it affected my Omega teammates. Judy's eyes kept flicking almost erratically, straining to pierce the haze, while Talia stumbled on roots hidden under the gray carpet of air. Finn's voice wavered as he spoke lowly. Still, surprisingly, he led us, occasionally pointing to faint imprints on the ground, guiding us with the sharpness of someone obviously used to watching and paying attention when others rushed ahead. And Roxy was still gone. For now, I told myself not to think about her. She was a distraction best left to stew. We had our mission: 3 shards, a finish line, and a ticking clock. And like I'd told the rest of the team, I was sure we would find her again. We broke into a clearing where the ground sloped into a marsh, stagnant pools reflecting what little light filtered through the fog. "There it is," Finn said, pointing ahead. I followed his line of sight, and sure enough, a glow pulsed faintly between the trees. Hope surged through me. "Let's—" But before we could move, we heard it, thrashing. "Help! Get me out of here!" Roxy. Never thought I'd hate being right. I rushed forward, skidding to a halt at the water's edge. The smell hit me first, rot and damp earth, and I might have laughed at the sight before me if it was anything but funny. Little Miss, I'm the strongest here, was waist-deep in muck, one arm hooked desperately around a protruding root. Every time she thrashed, the swamp pulled harder, dragging her down with greedy hands. "Gods," Judy muttered, rolling her eyes. "Of course." Talia's face paled. If she sinks any lower, she won't be able to breathe." Finn scanned the area, his voice calm but strained. "The mud's thick. If anyone goes in, they'll get trapped too." Lovely. Before I could form a plan, a metallic crackle cut through the fog, and a voice boomed across the woods, carried by invisible speakers. "Attention competitors. 6 teams have successfully completed the challenge. 3 advancement slots remain." The words hit like ice shards on my skin. 6 teams had finished. That left us competing for scraps. "Shit," Judy echoed my thoughts, spinning toward me. "We haven't even found the second shard. We don't have time for this." I looked at Roxy, then back to my team. I knew what they were thinking. Leave her, cut our losses, push ahead before it was too late. Logical, efficient, survival at its most ruthless. But damn it, I wasn't built that way. I crouched low, eyes locked on Roxy's panicked face. "You're a bitch," I said, "but you're not dying here. Hold still." Her teeth snapped together in what was probably more embarrassment than pride. Don't act like you care. You'll only slow down your precious team if you waste time on me." But beneath her abrasive words, I caught the flicker of terror she couldn't hide. She didn't want to be left alone. No one ever did. "Finn," I barked, pulling a coil of rope from our supplies, "find me a sturdy trunk." I tossed one end of the rope at him, "and secure a knot. Talia, Judy, stay ready. If she slips, you help me pull." They hesitated, and I snapped. "I would do the same for any of you. We're a team." My tone left no room for debate as I glared at each one of them, making it clear I expected them to act. Now. Judy muttered a curse but grudgingly obeyed, stomping over to stand beside Talia. Finn's hands steadily tied a loop, his fingers moving with quick precision. "On 3, I called, tossing the rope toward Roxy. 1, 2, 3. She lunged, fingers scraping over the wet coil. For a sickening second it slid through her grasp. Then she clamped down, knuckles white, body jerking against the marsh's greedy suction. "Pull!" The rest of the team joined in as the rope strained, biting into my palms as the swamp tried to claim Roxy. Judy's muscles bulged, Talia whimpered but dug in her heels. Finn angled the rope around the trunk for leverage. My heart pounded, my arms screaming with effort, until at last Roxy's body broke free with a wet-sucking sound. She collapsed onto solid ground, coughing, smeared from shoulder to toe in muck. For a long moment, none of us moved, breaths ragged in the choking fog. Then Finn stiffened. His gaze darted to the right, toward the faint shimmer we had seen beyond the marsh. The second shard, it's gone. My eyes widened as I searched for the glow, but it had vanished. Judy swore viciously. That was it, gone. Gods damn it. Talia's shoulders slumped. The other shards are in the opposite zone, and will never make it there in time to find two. Their despair pressed heavy in the air, gnawing at the strands of fragile unity we had left. For a heartbeat, even I felt it, the crushing weight of inevitability. We were too late. But surrender wasn't an option. I straightened, wiping muck from my hands. We're still breathing. That means we still try. The other shards are across the woods. Longer route or not, we move. Judy opened her mouth, then shut it again, jaw clenched. Finn gave a single, steady nod. Talia bit her lip but whispered, okay. Behind us, Roxy staggered upright, eyes blazing. You guys really are stupid, you know that? I arched a brow. Excuse you? She wiped a sleeve across her face, then reached into her mud-soaked bag and rummaged blindly. After a while, she pulled out a glowing fragment of stone, slick with swamp water but unmistakable. The second moonstone shard. My breath caught. You had it? She shrugged, her voice trembling. I grabbed it before I... She glanced at the swamp and shuddered. Another team was close. I thought they'd take it from me, so I ran. Then, well... She gestured at the swamp. The others stared in stunned silence. Judy finally barked out a laugh, sharp and delighted. You almost drowned sitting on the damn thing? Color flared in Roxy's cheeks. Shut up. You guys were the ones who risked the whole damn challenge to get me out. Yeah, Judy snorted. Pretty stupid of us. Roxy scoffed and said nothing. But something shifted in that moment. The tension that had crackled between us since the start softened. Just a little. And just like that, Roxy wasn't a rival or a burden now. She was a teammate, mud-stained and stubborn, but ours. I met her gaze. We're not done yet. 2 down, 1 to go, together. Roxy held my stare for a long, bristling second. Then she gave a sharp nod. We set off again, forging toward the far side of the woods. Every step sucked at our boots, branches clawed at our clothes, but the fog no longer felt as suffocating. We had momentum, we had a chance, until we stumbled upon our next obstacle. A faint rustle, too deliberate to be wind, brushed against my ears. I froze, raising a hand for silence. The others stilled, eyes wide, listening. The sound came again. A shift of leaves, the crunch of weight on damp soil. We weren't alone. Judy's hand slid to the knife at her belt as she whispered, Another team. Talia's breath quickened. What do we do? Combat wasn't against the rules. In fact, the history of the trials was painted with blood, teams sabotaging each other, brutally clashing to secure their advancement. If another group thought we were weak, they wouldn't hesitate to strike. Lay low, I whispered, motioning them behind the thicker brush. The fog will hide us. Wait for them to pass, then we move. But then the figures emerged from the fog. At their head strode a tall man with broad shoulders, his gait commanding, his presence sharp enough to penetrate through the mist. The silver in his dark hair glinted even in the fog, his jaw set in grim determination. Recognition crashed into me like a blow, and I hesitated, not knowing whether to feel comfort or stay on guard. Would I get William Reed, Lucian's brother, or Alpha William, leader of Ashvale Pack? Friend or foe? Seraphina's POV. Need proof that this was an illusion and someone somewhere was controlling the fog? As soon as I recognized William, he turned in our direction. We would have remained hidden, but then the fog shifted, curling like restless spirits around the clearing, and we were suddenly exposed. Our eyes met, and for a tense heartbeat, the forest itself seemed to hold its breath. Then William's shoulders loosened, his rigid stance softening. Seraphina, he said, voice warm enough to cut through the chill. It's just you. Relief flickered in his expression, chasing away the hard mask of an alpha on guard, and I found myself relaxing slightly. For a moment, I almost forgot we stood in the middle of a brutal competition. He looked like the man I'd met at the gala, gracious, steady, carrying his brother's sharpness in his jawline, but softening it with his own brand of kindness. William, my voice came out steadier than I felt. You startled us. His lips twitched with the faintest smile. The feeling's mutual. His eyes flicked past me and hardened ever so slightly as he assessed the rest of my team. Judy bristled like a cat, her hand still on her blade. Finn's stare was cautious but unblinking, and Talia shrank behind them. Roxy, mud-stained yet defiant, folded her arms and looked ready to snap if he so much as breathed wrong. William spread his hands in a non-threatening gesture. We don't need to be enemies here. Not when the woods themselves are enough of one. The tension in my chest loosened another fraction and I took a shallow breath. I gave a slow nod. Agreed. His team emerged from the haze, 5 in total, including William. They looked like warriors bred for endurance, broad shoulders, sharp eyes, every movement deliberate. But there was strain in their pale faces, a tightness around the mouth and eyes. The fog was clawing at them a lot harder than it clawed at us. The smile William gave me reminded me longingly of Lucian. We should move together, strength in numbers and less chance of ambush. What do you say? I hesitated. It was a risk. Traveling with another team meant exposing our strengths and weaknesses and splitting any discoveries. But it also meant security in the face of predators, both human and otherwise, that may lurk in the fog. We'd been lucky so far, but just because the fog didn't affect us didn't mean dangers didn't exist that could. I measured his expression, looking for the flicker of duplicity, the calculation of someone ready to use us. What I found instead was sincerity, and the quiet trustworthiness I'd glimpsed before at the gala. Okay, I said at last, until the shards are gone. He inclined his head, sealing the verbal pact. Side by side, we set off together in a wary procession of near strangers united by necessity. My team stayed close together, vigilantly watching our surroundings while William's group moved out slightly ahead, scanning the path and maintaining vigilance, their formation signaling practiced coordination. It was almost peaceful for a stretch. The damp earth squelched beneath our boots, the mist swallowing our outlines and spitting them back in fractured silhouettes. Our breaths mingled, warm against the cold bite of the woods. Then one of William's men staggered. "Mark?" William turned sharply, just in time to catch his comrade's shoulder. The man's eyes rolled back, his knees buckling, before his body slumped fully into his alpha's arms. "Shit!" one of the others cursed, rushing to help. "Maven," William barked, and a woman with dark braids tied back tightly and eyes shadowed with fatigue surged forward, dropping to her knees at once. Her hands worked with brisk efficiency as she checked the man's pulse, lifted his eyelids, pressed fingers against the side of his throat. "He's breathing," she announced, though her voice carried a thread of unease. "But he's not conscious. His symptoms are worsening." William's brow furrowed, his grip tightening on his unconscious teammate. "Symptoms?" I asked. "What symptoms?" Maven didn't answer. Or perhaps she couldn't. Her hands trembled faintly as she reached for her satchel, pulling out herbs and salves with jerky haste. We'd all been given the same resources in packs, but she didn't look like she knew what to do with theirs. Sweat gleamed along her brow as her shaky fingers fumbled with the vials. I exchanged a glance with Judy, then with Finn. Our gazes all said the same thing. Something wasn't right. "It's the fog," another of William's men, Bob, I recalled dimly, suddenly growled. His eyes burned with suspicion as he turned on me and my team. "The Omegas. Look at them. They're fine. Too fine." The others shifted uneasily, their gazes sliding toward us, replicating Bob's suspicion. My stomach clenched, and suddenly pairing up sounded like the stupidest thing I'd ever done. "What are you suggesting?" I asked, calmly stepping between their accusing stares and my team, despite the nerves flaring up under my skin. Bob sneered. "I'm suggesting this isn't an accident. I'm suggesting that your precious Lucian Reed designed this fog to cripple the strong and let his little pets waltz through unharmed." He scoffed bitterly. "Poison masked as a trial. A rigged game to guarantee OTS's victory." Roxy bristled, stepping forward with her fists clenched. "Hey, watch your fucking mouth." "Enough," William barked. He shot a reprimanding look at Bob. "Take heed how you speak. Lucian is my brother and a former member of our pack. Don't forget that." Bob ducked his head. "I understand, Alpha. But," he pointed at Talia, at Finn, at me, "they're walking like the fog's nothing. Our brothers are collapsing, and they're barely blinking. You call that a coincidence?" William's jaw flexed, and he said nothing, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. For some reason, that doubt in his eyes scorched me. I wanted to rush to Lucian's defense. He would never do something so underhanded. But hadn't I myself had the same doubts about the strategy behind the fog? But whatever reason Lucian had, I wouldn't stand here and listen to his name be tarnished. I folded my arms and met the heat of Bob's glare with ice. "Do you have proof of your accusations?" Bob's mouth opened, then closed. All the fight left me as his hands twitched, as if grasping for something invisible. Before he could muster words to further fuel his argument, his body jerked violently, and he crumpled. Maven let out a strangled cry, dropping her herbs to reach for him. But even she swayed on her knees, her breath hitching, skin paling to almost translucent. "Shit," Judy hissed, drawing closer to me. I crouched immediately beside Maven, my voice sharp with urgency. "Finn, do we have anything that can—" He was already moving, slipping his pack from his shoulders, retrieving a vial of pale powder and a small jar. "Here." His voice was calm, practical. He pressed the jar into Maven's hands, steadying them when they shook too badly to hold it. "Breathe this in. Slow, not too deep. It'll ease the pressure for now." Her eyes fluttered shut as she obeyed. Her breathing slowed, steadied faintly. Finn turned to William, his tone respectful but firm. "She's overexposed. They all are. This isn't sustainable. They need proper treatment, not makeshift remedies." Silence fell heavily. William's gaze lingered on his fallen men, the fog curling around them like vultures circling prey. He looked much older in that moment, weighed down by more than the forest. Finally, he exhaled, slow and pained. "We withdraw." The word hung between us like a death knell. "No," one of his remaining men rasped. "Alpha, we can still—" William cut him off with a single sharp look. "No, I won't gamble your lives on pride. We're leaving while you all can still crawl out of here." He turned to me then, and I was surprised at the warmth still lingering under his exhaustion and frustration. "This isn't your burden, Serafina. Don't carry the weight of my choice. I'll get the truth from Lucian myself. Whatever his reasons for designing this," his jaw flexed but his voice remained steady, "I'll hear them from his lips." I swallowed hard, and even though he'd told me not to feel otherwise, I couldn't help the guilt knotting my insides. "William," he lifted a hand, forestalling me. "No regrets, just finish this. Secure your place. One of us must advance, and right now that has to be you." The words settled into me like stone, equal parts blessing and command. And then the forest itself cut short any reply. The broadcast voice thundered through the fog, metallic and merciless. "Attention, competitors. 11 teams have completed the challenge. 1 advancement slot remains." A shiver rolled down my spine, 1 left, and every step mattered. William gave a wry, weary smile. "There! The decision is made for us." I nodded, my throat too tight for words. "I'm sorry you had to withdraw like this." He clasped my shoulder, firm and warm. "Don't be. Now go, and may the moon favor your path." As his team began to gather their fallen, lifting and supporting those who couldn't walk, I turned back to my own. Judy's eyes gleamed fiercely, with renewed determination. Talia looked shaken but nodded, whispering hopefully, "We can still do this." Finn adjusted his pack, brow calm as ever, while Roxy muttered something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like, "About damn time." I drew in a long breath, as if daring the fog to try its worst on me. 1 shard left, 1 slot left. Serafina's povey. The last shard gleamed faintly in the fog, like it had been waiting for us all along. My fingers brushed the rough, moonlit stone as I pulled it free from the root where it was wedged. A tremor passed through me, not from the effort, but from what it meant. We had done it. The final advancement slot was ours. For a heartbeat, none of us spoke. There was just the sound of our ragged breathing, the hiss of mist curling low around our boots, and the glow of the shard's faint shimmer in my palm. Then Judy laughed, loud, fierce, joyous. She grabbed my arm, shaking me so hard the shard nearly slipped from my fingers. "We did it! We actually did it!" Finn exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours, his shoulders easing at last. Even Talia let out a little squeak, covering her mouth as though laughter might be too indulgent, then giggling anyway. Even Roxy couldn't hide the spark in her eyes. Her lips twitched, and though she tried to suppress it, her posture relaxed and her gaze softened. A reluctant but undeniable joy. I closed my fist around the shard, drawing strength from its cool weight as I chuckled. "Let's get to the finish line before one of you collapses from excitement." We half ran, half stumbled through the fog toward the clearing where the finish markers blazed. The moment we stepped past, a blaring announcement confirmed what we already knew. Team 7, advancement confirmed, all slots are now filled. Cheers broke from my team. Relief rolled through me like a wave, washing away the dread and doubt that had shadowed every step. An attendant pressed thin silver badges into our hands, each engraved with the OTS insignia and the numeral 9, our new team designation for the next round. Mine sat heavy on my chest when I pinned it to the jacket Lucian gave me. I brushed the fabric reverently, imagining the smile he would give me if he were standing before me. Gods, I missed him. And Maya. They would both be so proud. Judy twirled her badge on the chain like a medal. We earned this, she squealed. Damn right we did. Surprisingly, Roxy didn't snap at her for being loud. She only muttered, "We'd better," though I caught the faint curve of her mouth. Talia clutched her badge close, eyes shining, and then she surprised me by suggesting, We should celebrate, not together." Judy immediately latched onto the idea. "Yes," she clapped her hands together excitedly. "Let's all go out to dinner." I smiled faintly. "Yeah, that sounds nice." Again, Roxy surprised me when she didn't protest. As long as it's not whatever sludge the cafeteria tries to pass off as stew. Talia's face brightened. "I know a place. It's quiet, affordable, and," she flushed at the sudden attention, ducking her head, "and the food's amazing. Please, let me take you." It wasn't just excitement in her tone. It was pride. Like offering us this restaurant was offering a piece of herself. I glanced at the others, then nodded. "Lead the way." The restaurant was tucked off a side street, lanterns glowing warm against the cool night. The scent of sizzling meat and herbs hit us before we even stepped inside, rich and mouthwatering. After the suffocating damp of the woods, the heat and spice felt like stepping into another world. We crowded into a wooden booth, badges still gleaming on our chests. Plates arrived soon after, steaming with roasted fish, spiced rice, and broth so fragrant even Roxy's scowl melted into a grudging nod. "Not bad," she muttered, then, after a bite, added with a smile, "Not bad at all." Talia's cheeks glowed pink, delight spilling out of her in laughter. "Food is a passion of mine, but I don't really have people to share it with." Her smile dimmed a little. "Back home, my brothers would tease me. They made fun of me for eating too much. That's why She gestured at her round frame, faltering. Silence settled, not cruel but heavy. "OTS is different, though," she rushed to add, with a shy smile. "No one cares about my weight, only that I pull it on the sparring mat." I reached over and squeezed her hand, as it should be. Then Judy leaned forward, stabbing a piece of fish with her chopsticks. "Screw your brothers," she declared, "and whoever else made fun of you. Their loss. They were properly bitter because they had no one to lead them to the joys of good food." Finn lifted his glass. "To Talia. May her taste always guide us." The toast earned a round of chuckles and lifted the shadows from Talia's face. The conversation shifted, loosening with every bite, as everyone told their own stories. Judy shared how she joined OTS after being overlooked for her pack's combat division, repeating what she'd told me about how much she wanted to make her family proud and give them a good standing in their pack. As tall as he was, Finn seemed to shrink when he spoke. I was always smaller than everyone else, too wiry to be picked for sparring. And my wolf, he shrugged. They said I looked more coyote than wolf, not noble enough. There was no bitterness in his tone, only a quiet acceptance. But it scraped at me, the cruelty of those who dismissed strength just because it didn't match their mold. "Idiots," Judy said flatly. "If they can't see the amazing value you bring, that's on them." Finn's mouth curved slightly, gratitude flickering in his gaze. Roxy was next, or should have been. But she just toyed with her cup, eyes darting between us, lips pressed tight. Judy nudged her. "Your turn. What dragged you to OTS?" Roxy's jaw clenched. I saw the hesitation in her eyes, the flicker of fear. I frowned, surprised. I knew that Roxy and Jessica had joined OTS together, but that was the extent of my knowledge. But it seemed that Jessica's shadow loomed even here, binding Roxy's tongue. Before any of us could pry an answer out of her, a sharp burst of noise split the air. The clatter of boots, the sharp ring of laughter at the entrance. All our heads turned in its direction, and I rolled my eyes. Jessica. She strode in with her team, flanking her like a queen with courtiers. Her piercing gaze swept the room, and when it landed on our table on Roxy, it hardened into a frown. Well. Her heels clicked across the floor as she approached. "Roxy, what a surprise." Roxy stiffened, her knuckles whitening around her cup. "When you ignored my text to hang out, I didn't think for the life of me it was because of." Jessica's eyes slid across the rest of us, dismissive. Them. Roxy's head dipped, and I couldn't stop my eyes from widening at the sudden act of submission. "I'm sorry," she said with uncharacteristic meekness. "I haven't been with my phone all day." Jessica's scoff was almost pitying. "I can't imagine what an awful day you've had, Rox. You must have suffered terribly dragging these deadweights all the way to advancement." Her teammates snickered on cue, voices dripping venom. Had to have been luck. They won't last another round. Losers dragging losers to the finish line. Pathetic. I was used to condescending barbs, and they all bounced off my skin like rubber pellets. But I couldn't say the same for my team. For Talia, who shrank into herself. For Finn, whose expression shuddered. For Judy, who tensed like she was preparing to leap across the table. And for Roxy, who slammed her palm down with a crack, rattling the dishes on the table. "Shut the fuck up!" For an instant, pride surged in me as the Roxy I knew surfaced. But then Jessica's eyes narrowed, cold and lethal, pinning Roxy in place. And Roxy shrank. Shoulders hunching, glare faltering, her defiance withering under the weight of Jessica's dominance. "Yikes," Jessica laughed. "Not you cowering. You're spending too much time with the weak, Roxy. That shit rubs off on you." My chest burned as I rose, my chair scraping harshly against the floor. "That's enough, Jessica." Her gaze snapped to me, disdain curling her lips. "Ooh, Serafina." She cocked her head to the side and widened her eyes. "Am I getting another lecture?" Damn right, she was. "You've completely forgotten the point of this trial," I said, voice steady though my pulse thundered. "The LST wasn't made for us to claw at each other. It was made to raise OTS higher, to prove that the weakest of us can stand with or against the strongest in any pack. You're an Omega." I swept my hand toward my team. "Just like them. Why you feel the need to lord over your equals is beyond me." Her smirk faltered ever so slightly. "You want to mock us?" I pressed, stepping closer. "Fine, but remember this. Of all the OTS squads, only 2 remain, yours and ours. That means our duty isn't just to ourselves, it's to OTS, and I'll be damned if I let you drag its honor through the mud because of your overinflated sense of self." For a moment, silence stretched taut as a bowstring. Jessica's jaw tightened, and I could see anger bristling through her like a storm. Her team shifted behind her, glancing at themselves uncomfortably. I arched a brow, waiting for a comeback. Finally, she leaned in so close I could smell the mint on her breath. "The only team dragging OTS's name through the mud is yours," she sneered. "But don't worry, OTS will win." She leaned back and folded her arms. "But it will be my team that leads us to victory." Judy snorted, and Jessica shot her a sharp look. Judy smiled and gave her the middle finger salute. Jessica rolled her eyes and, with a sharp turn of her heel, snapped, "Enjoy your tiny win while it lasts. The real victory will be mine." Her team followed in her wake, leaving the sting of her words behind. None of us moved till the door swung shut behind them. Then I turned back to my squad. "We made it this far," I said quietly, shooting each of them a confident smile, "and we'll go further, together." Judy grinned fiercely, lifting her glass in the air. Finn met my eyes and gave a quiet, confident nod. Talia's eyes glistened, and she blinked away tears, her smile wide. Even Roxy, though silent, sat up straighter and met my gaze with a flicker of respect, her posture no longer withdrawn. And despite Jessica's taunts and barbs, my faith that we could win only grew stronger. After all, winning wouldn't be any fun if there was no one's face to rub it in, Serafina's Pove. By the time I made it back home, exhaustion had sunk deep into my bones, and my body ached in all the familiar places. But my heart felt light, and the excitement bubbling inside me refused to let me collapse straight into bed. For a long moment, I lay staring at the dark ceiling, replaying the day like a reel I couldn't stop. The first rush of dread as we stepped into the misty woods. The icy spike of fear when we stumbled on Roxy, half drowned in the marsh. The taut thread of tension with William's team. And then, finally, the dizzying relief of clutching that last moonstone in my hands, of realizing we had actually passed. Not even the brief stint with Jessica could dull my happiness. My hands instinctively reached for my phone, but a pang went through me when I realized that I could neither tell Maya nor Lucian about it. Ugh. So instead, I dug out my encrypted phone and called the one other person I wanted to talk to that I actually could. The screen lit up with Daniel's name, and before the first ring even ended, his small, sleepy face appeared, framed by the dim golden glow of the lamp in his room. "Mom!" His voice pitched high, his eyes lighting up with an energy that flooded me with warmth. I smiled so wide my cheeks hurt. "Hi, my baby. I have good news." "I already know." He lifted up a paper, waving it so close to the camera that all I could see was a chaotic splash of blue and silver crayon. "Grandma and Grandpa told me when they heard the announcer say your team's name. You won, Mom. You did it." I blinked. "Wait, you mean you were watching? Christian and Leona were watching?" Daniel pulled the paper back, finally revealing the entire picture to me. It was a child's sketch of 5 figures holding up a star-shaped stone with messy letters scrawled across the top, Team 7 Champions. Crayons filled the page with wild joy, blue for the mist, silver for the shard, yellow for the badges. But what caught me most were the little additions in the corner, my son's careful handwriting, drawn by Daniel, Grandma, and Grandpa. I stared at the words. "They helped you draw this?" "Uh-huh." His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, as if we were trading secrets. "Grandma did the shiny part. Grandpa said the trees should be bigger, so he drew them. But I told them only I can draw you," his eyes twinkled, "'cause you're mine." My throat tightened, the sting of unexpected tears pricking my eyes. "And what did they say about the competition?" "That you're amazing. They said they're proud of you." Daniel leaned closer, his grin covering more than half the screen. "Me too, Mommy. I'm the proudest." For a moment, I was too busy reeling from the information to process the end of his sentence. Pride. From Leona, from Christian, the same Leona who had once looked at me like I was a stain on her family name, the same Christian who had cornered me with cold disapproval at every turn. It should have meant more. Maybe once it would have. But I was no longer that affection-starved girl who'd been desperate for my in-laws' approval. So tonight, I just nodded and tucked the thought into the quiet part of me where I had started storing things I wasn't ready to examine. Their pride didn't matter. Not anymore. Only Daniel's did. "Thank you, my love, and thank you for the drawing," I whispered. I pressed my fingertips to the screen, wishing I could touch his warm little face through it. "I love you so much." "I love you too, Mom," he chirped. "And I'll keep rooting for you, okay?" I nodded, blinking back tears. "Thank you, baby." His smile stretched wider, then a yawn swallowed it whole. "Okay, good night, Mommy. Win the next round too, okay? Then I'll make an even bigger drawing." "I will," I said softly, blinking back tears. "For you." The call ended, but the warmth lingered, cushioning me as I finally drifted off to sleep. Morning found me at the OTS cafeteria, the heavy fog of the trials replaced by sunlight streaming through the high glass windows. The aroma of coffee and toasted bread drifted through the air, a welcome comfort after the day of damp earth and sweat. Today was a rest day, no competition or training. Technically, I had no reason to be at OTS. I would rather spend the day shopping with Maya or hanging out with Lucian. Alas, I was at OTS because I hoped to catch a glimpse of one of them. If I couldn't talk to them, at least I could, wave from a distance, right? I might have considered it pathetic that I'd grown so attached to my 2 closest friends if it weren't already a miracle that I had 2 close friends to begin with. The cafeteria was alive with chatter this morning. Laughter spilled across the room, clattering dishes and rustling uniforms, blending into a hum that seemed to vibrate through the walls. I carried my tray to a corner table, my eyes darting around for familiar faces, but came up empty. I had just lifted a fork full of eggs when a musical voice drifted over my shoulder. "Mind if I sit with you?" I looked up and blinked in surprise. The Luna of Seabreeze Pack stood there, tray in hand, sea-green hair gleaming under the light like a ribbon of ocean caught in the sun. She didn't wait for my answer, just slid gracefully into the seat across from me, as though it had been reserved for her all along. "You," she said, tilting her head with a smile that could have outshone the sun in a competition. "We're incredible." I blinked. "Excuse me?" Her laugh tinkled, light and effortless. "Your team, the way you led them through the misty woods was amazing. I couldn't take my eyes off you guys. I barely watched my own team." Heat flushed my cheeks. I wondered when praise would stop feeling like an ill-fitting cloak resting oddly on my shoulders. "We just did what we had to do." That's what makes it impressive, she said firmly. Most alphas and leaders crush their teams into submission, but you pulled yours together like threads into a tapestry. And that girl, the hot-headed one with the sharp tongue, you even managed to get through to her. I ducked my head, focusing on my coffee. You flatter me, Luna. Oh, don't Luna me, she teased, waving her spoon. Call me Celine. My friends do. She winked. You and I are practically friends already. I huffed out an incredulous laugh. Her energy was disarming. Most Lunas wore their rank like a diamond crown. Celine wore hers like silk, light and easy, and against all logic I felt something stir in me, an inexplicable closeness, as though we'd actually been friends our whole lives. We talked as we ate, her chatter flowing like a tide, mine cautious but slowly loosening under her fervor. She asked what Los Angeles was really like. I always imagined it as stars and smog, glamorous and grimy at the same time. And I found myself smiling as I described the sprawl of freeways, the neon nights, the strange emptiness that could still seep in despite the crowds. In turn, she told me about her packed territory, eyes alight with pride. She spoke about the endless coastline, the gull cries at dawn, the wind so sharp it could carry a wolf's howl for miles. Her laughter rang out, bright and unguarded. I'm telling you, Sarah, you don't know true joy and freedom until you're running on the shore. The sea breeze, the actual one, not the pack, blowing through your fur. I smiled wistfully, wondering what it would feel like to have any sort of air blowing through my fur. It sounds amazing. Celine set down her cup, eyes gleaming. You don't have a pack right now, do you? The question came so far out of left field, I had to pause to replay it in my mind to be sure I heard her right. I hesitated. No, not exactly. Had I ever had a pack to begin with? Well, she said, leaning forward, voice warm and gentle, Seabreeze would love to have you. If you ever wished it, you'd fit right in with us. The offer hung between us, startling in its sincerity. I searched her gaze, looking for pity, for condescension. I found none, just earnestness, like she meant every word. A lump rose in my throat. That's generous of you. It's pretty selfish of me, really, she corrected with a grin. You're a rare gem, and I want to snatch you up before anyone else realizes. I stared at her desperately, trying to figure out what her angle was. She laughed softly. How about this, a visit when the LSTs are over? I exhaled slowly, touched more deeply than I could admit. Maybe. Good. She clapped her hands once, delight spilling from her. Then it settled. One day, you'll see the sea from our cliffs. Her smile grew kind. Hair or fur, you'll feel the amazing sea breeze. The thought evoked a fuzzy sensation in my chest, an image of belonging where I least expected it. We parted with Celine's kiss on my cheek, her scent of sea salt and citrus still clinging to me as I made for the cafeteria doors. I was so lost in thought that I didn't notice the figure cutting across my path until I collided with him, hard enough to knock me off balance. But strong hands caught me before I could stumble back, and I instinctively reached out, gripping a powerful forearm for balance. Sorry, I wasn't. The words tumbled out as I lifted my head and froze. The apology withered on my tongue as the tender warmth Celine had left me evaporated in an instant. Obsidian black eyes locked on mine. The weight of his presence instantly crackled the air with tension. Kieran, Serafina's Pove. Of all the people to run into this early, in OTS of all places, I would have wagered on literally anyone else. But no. Fate or cruelty had deemed it fit to plant Kieran Blackthorne right in front of me. The cavernous cafeteria seemed to shrink around us, voices fading to muffled static, dishes clack a far-off storm. He didn't move. He didn't speak. Just watched me. And fuck, I burned under his gaze. Or maybe it was from the way his hands lingered. One still curled around my arm, the other braced firmly at my waist from when he caught me. His grip tightened. Not painful, but firm enough that my pulse jumped beneath his touch. Almost possessive, as if letting me go wasn't an option. His hands were warm, steady. The longer they stayed on me, the more acutely aware I became of every inch of contact. Then, as if suddenly realizing how tightly he held me, he released me, too quickly. I nearly stumbled back, losing the precarious balance he had given me. My skin tingled where his hands had been, phantom heat rushing in to fill the abrupt chill of his absence. Sorry. I clamped my mouth shut instantly. I didn't know who owned the raspy, shaky mess of a voice that had come out of my lips, but it sure as hell wasn't me. The corner of his lips twitched in what I would have called amusement if the look in his eyes wasn't so fucking intense. His gaze pinned me, the air between us so charged that the whole OTS was in danger of exploding at the slightest spark. My pulse drummed painfully in my ears, and even though I didn't trust my voice, every instinct screamed at me to demand answers. A dozen questions tangled in my mind, weighing down my tongue. But it all boiled down to one: what the fuck was he doing here? But what right did I have to ask that question? Boundaries. I was the one who'd asked for that. I was the one constantly sick of him prying into my business. What he did and where he frequented did not matter to me. So no words escaped my parted lips, and we just stood there, locked in a silence that vibrated with all the things neither of us could voice. Then he took a deep, shuddering breath, and for a split second I thought he might break the silence. Part of me braced for it, the clash, the inevitable storm that always raged when we were together. But he stayed mute, his hands curling into tight fists at his side as his eyes bore into mine, scorching, searching, as if they were trying to force words out of me, pull me into a conversation I refused to start. "Sarah!" I jolted like I'd been struck by lightning. I blinked, the air rushing back into my lungs all at once as whatever spell had been woven between me and Kieran shattered. Judy's cheerful voice rang out, startling in its brightness. She stood at the entrance, waving one arm high above her head excitedly. My gaze darted back to Kieran's. "I should." Without a word, he stepped aside, inclining his head slightly. I nodded once, the motion jerky and awkward as I forced myself forward, only stiffening slightly when my shoulder lightly brushed the front of his shirt. Each step was deliberate, measured, while my insides burned with the effort it took not to look back. The scent of coffee and Kieran lingered, heavy, clinging to me as the doors loomed closer. "Yes, you're here!" Judy beamed as I approached her. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun. Her uniform had been traded for a comfortable sweater and jeans. She giggled as she slipped her arm through mine. "I'm so glad you're around." I smiled at her, forcing back the shadow of my encounter with Kieran. I was grateful that she didn't ask why I'd been standing in the middle of the cafeteria staring at my ex-husband for goddess knows how long. "What's up?" She tugged me gently. "Come on, you're coming home with me." I blinked. "Home?" She nodded. "My family is around for the LSTs, and I'm spending the day with them." She began to pull me along before I could protest. "And now you are too. My sisters will never forgive me if I don't bring you along." I didn't want to intrude on her family moment, but the prospect of spending my off day alone, where I would either spend it missing my friends or scrutinizing the run-in with Kieran, was not an appealing one. So I let my smile widen and let Judy pull me along with her. Her family had rented a modest house on the edge of the neutral zone, just a short walk from the OTS headquarters. From the outside, it looked unremarkable, white siding, flower pots on the porch, but the moment Judy pushed open the door, warmth and noise spilled out like a tidal wave. "Judy!" squealed a small voice before a boy no taller than my waist launched himself into her arms. She caught him easily, spinning him in a circle, while 3 more children barreled into the entryway. Behind them came 2 women, her sisters, I realized at once. They shared Judy's lively eyes and infectious smile, though one wore hers more softly, the other more broadly. "Serafina, wow," one of them said, brushing a strand of hair back as she stepped forward. "We've heard a lot about you. We're huge fans." The words tugged at my stomach. Fans? Huge? Before I could respond, an older woman who had to be Judy's mother appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a flour-dusted apron. Mrs. Barnes was taller than I expected, her presence solid and radiant, like a hearth fire. She enveloped my hand in both of hers. "Thank you," she said simply, "for looking out for my Judy." I almost stumbled on my response. "She doesn't need looking after." I smiled at Judy, remembering how fiercely she stood up to Brinjar and Roxy. "If anything, she looks out for me." Mrs. Barnes chuckled, her eyes softening. "Still, I can see she values your friendship. That's enough." And then I was swept inside. The house was alive in a way I had forgotten homes could be. Children's laughter spilled from every corner. The aroma of baking pies and roasted meat filled the air. The sisters moved around each other with an ease that came from years of living together, their conversation overlapping without ever missing a beat. They treated Judy like a hero, each story she shared from the trials and her time in OTS sparking gasps, laughter, or proud nods. Her nieces and nephews crowded around, tugging at her sleeves, begging her to recount the moment she'd landed a decisive strike against another competitor. Listening made me so happy, especially knowing Judy had joined in the first place to give her family a better standing in their pack. At some point, I found myself on the couch with two of the smaller ones pressed against my side, their wide eyes fixed on me. "Is it true you beat the mist?" the little girl whispered reverently, like she was referring to some ancient artifact. I blinked. "The mist?" "The fog," Judy supplied from across the room, laughing as she held another niece upside down by the ankles, "in the misty woods." I smiled faintly. "Yes, but I didn't do it alone. We worked together." The children's awe didn't dim, though, and one of them declared, "You're like a real Luna." I laughed, but the words cut deeper than I expected. Happiness outpaced by a sudden pang, emptiness welling up underneath the surface of my smile. Later, Mrs. Barnes insisted I sit at the kitchen table while she prepared something she called her good luck pie. "It's tradition," she explained, rolling the dough with decisive movements. "I bake one before every big challenge. It's kept our family safe this long. Now it'll keep you safe, too." I shook my head, my cheeks warming. "I couldn't possibly. You can and you will." Her tone brooked no argument. Judy isn't the only one I'm rooting for anymore. The lump in my throat was sudden as a mix of longing and discomfort struck me all at once. I wasn't used to mothers like this, warm, proud, unquestioning in their acceptance. I didn't know where to put the feeling it stirred, and oh gods, the longing. It was actually painful. The knowledge that I didn't have a family as warm and bright and happy as Judy's, siblings who adored me, a mother who doted on me. What did that woman in the forest say? "There is no loss greater than that which you barely had." When the pie came out of the oven, golden and steaming, the entire family cheered as if it were some great victory. Mrs. Barnes sliced it generously, pressing the first plate into my hands. It was sweet, tart, rich, comfort baked into a crust. "Take some with you," she said later, packing not only the pie but an entire collection of baked goods into bags I tried and failed to refuse. Food is love, and we have plenty to give. By the time I left, my arms were full, my chest lightened by something I hadn't expected to feel today. Belonging, even if borrowed. That feeling lasted until I reached my own doorstep, and there she was, my own mother. And just like that, in a pattern that was becoming as familiar as breathing, the warmth I had carried all the way home chilled, brittle as ice. Serafina's Povee. I was exhausted. That had to be it. Or maybe my wistfulness and longing had conjured up this outrageous sight. Because there was no universe where Margaret Lockwood stood on my porch with a pie in her hands, eerily identical to the one Mrs. Barnes had pressed into mine, like some doting mother out of a storybook. Not when the pain from the last time I'd seen her was still fresh, like a new wound. The image rose in my mind, her face carved with disdain, her words slicing me open in that suffocating hospital room. She tried to kill my daughter. She hadn't even flinched as she delivered that gutting accusation. Whether she knew it or not, in that very moment, with the broken pieces of my family as witnesses, my mother had shoveled the last bit of dirt onto the grave of our already dead relationship. She'd chosen Celeste. She'd shoved me aside. And there was nothing left between me and Margaret Lockwood anymore. So I tried to ignore her. My arms ached from the weight of pastry-filled containers and cellophane-wrapped pies, but I tightened my hold on the bags and shifted them against my hip as I took a long, steadying breath. Maybe if I hurried, I could make it to my door, slip inside, and pretend Margaret Lockwood was nothing more than a cruel hallucination born of exhaustion and stupid, stupid longing. "Serafina." Her voice was as it always was, too composed, too careful. She reached out for me, but I jerked away before she could touch me. "Do I know you?" I asked, my voice as composed and careful as hers. Hurt flashed across her face before she skillfully masked it. "I'm your mother, Sarah." I scoffed before I could help myself. "Nope, not doing this. Sarah, you made your choice, remember?" I snapped, cursing myself when my voice wobbled. Celeste is your only daughter." Her lips parted and that mask fractured just slightly around the edges, and suddenly she looked older. So much older. And tired. Her spine was still stiff as a ruler, her posture screaming control, but her eyes, those sharp, unyielding Lockwood eyes, wavered. I hated myself for the sudden urge to drop the bags in my hands and wrap my arms around her. And then, as I was still trying to stamp out that ridiculous feeling, she sighed. I was wrong. The feeling vanished. Wrong? My laugh was bitter, humorless. Wrong doesn't even begin to scrape the barrel of all the faults you bear. "You have every right to be upset with me," she admitted, her chin dipping. It startled me, that dip, like lowering a crown from her head. I was irrational at the hospital. I let my anger, my grief, blind me. I nodded. "Please, don't take the blindfold off on my account. Keep your eyes on your only daughter, okay?" I adjusted the bags in my hand and reached for my door handle. "But I came here because I heard you advanced in the trials. I wanted to congratulate you." I blinked, turning back to her. "You watched?" She smiled softly. "Of course, dear, my daughters are participating. Of course. For some ridiculous, inane reason, Celeste was part of Frostbane's team in the OTS. I could only thank my lucky stars that I hadn't run into her. Yet. I wasn't a fool. I knew that our regularly scheduled confrontation was still in my near future. And of course, Celeste's participation would be the reason my mother would deem it fit to watch the LST. I eyed the pie in Margaret's hand. My words came out as a jagged whisper. "And I'm supposed to believe these aren't just Celeste's leftovers?" She actually had the nerve to flinch. "No," she said quickly, clutching the pie box as though it were precious evidence she had to submit. "These aren't leftovers, Sarah. I prepared this separately, intentionally, for you." The box trembled slightly in her hands as she extended it toward me, her gaze a contrasting mixture of defiance and shame. "It's your favorite." Her self-deprecating smile seemed calculated to garner sympathy or leniency from me. "I made sure this time." I almost didn't take the box. My instincts screamed at me to leave it dangling in the air, to watch her face tighten with that same wounded pride she'd inflicted on me my entire life. But my traitorous fingers brushed the edge of the box before I could stop them. I told myself I was only curious. I wanted to see if she'd actually gotten my favorite pie correct. Margaret's relief was a fragile exhale. She placed the box carefully on the porch rail, as if she didn't trust me to keep hold of it. "I'll go." She took a shaky step back. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "I didn't come to intrude or push you, dear, just to say congratulations. I hope you know you've made me." She stopped, swallowing hard, as if the words were painful to release. "You've made me proud." Without waiting for an answer, she turned and descended my porch steps. Her heels clicked against the pavement, steady as a metronome, until the night swallowed her figure whole. I stared at the pie box like it might detonate. It looked like the physical embodiment of every spiteful word, every cutting dismissal, every nail hammered into my psyche. I wanted to hurl it straight into the trash. But then my eye caught on something scrawled in one corner of the cardboard lid. A small, childish doodle, almost invisible unless you knew to look. It was a little crescent moon sketched in blue ink, curved around a 5-pointed star. My breath hitched. My knees wobbled under the weight of recognition. My lucky charm, it was a silly little thing I came up with when I was little, and I doodled it over every single space I came across. Mirrors, napkins, once on Margaret's favorite apron. She remembered? I set the bags Judy's family had given me down, hands trembling, and lifted the lid. The aroma hit me first. Sweet, tangy, spiced. Familiar. My chest constricted. It wasn't some generic flavor pulled from Celeste's favorites. It was mine. My favorite pie, at least. Cherry and almond, dusted with cinnamon sugar across the lattice crust. Images bloomed in the forefront of my mind. My mother carefully teaching me how to bake the recipe when I was 5. My father teasing her because the edges had come out slightly charred. Me fanning my mouth because I'd been too impatient for a taste to let the pie cool down. Ethan stealing extra bites when he thought no one was looking. Celeste, sticky-fingered and babbling as she took her first unsteady steps across the kitchen tiles. Not only was it a nostalgic punch in the gut, it was a poignant reminder that once, 1,000,000 years ago, the Lockwoods had been a happy whole family. Tears pricked hot in my eyes. I couldn't bring myself to throw the pie away, but I couldn't bring myself to eat it either. So I placed the box on the kitchen counter, like it was some cursed artifact I hadn't decided how to handle. That night, sleep dragged me under heavy and deep, and in my dreams the Lockwood garden bloomed. Although it wasn't the garden of today, pruned too carefully, stripped of its wildness, transformed into a sterile showcase for power, I knew it instantly. It was the garden of my childhood, alive, vibrant. Lavender and roses spilled over stone borders, and fireflies sparked like embers in the dusk. In the dream, I was small again, no older than 6 or 7, my hair tangled, my dress rumpled from climbing trees with Ethan. My legs swung, kicking idly at the air, because I was perched on the wooden swing suspended from the great oak. And there he was, my father, Edward Lockwood in his prime, with his broad shoulders and weathered hands. His eyes softened when they landed on me, full of the love that had waned more and more as the years passed. He pushed the swing gently, not too hard, letting me soar just enough that the world tilted and the sky spread impossibly wide. "Higher, Papa," I squealed. He chuckled, deep and warm. "If I push you too high, little wolf, you'll take off flying and forget to come back down." "I won't forget." I twisted to look at him, hair whipping across my face. "I'll always come back to you." His expression softened in that way I barely remembered, the way that back then had belonged only to me. "That's because you're my Seraphina, my precious princess," I giggled. "I'm not a princess. Princesses wear crowns. I don't have one." "You don't need one," he said simply, "because one day you'll be the heroine of your own story, like the ones I tell you at night, the ones with courage and fire and wolves who never bow to anyone." My eyes widened as he crouched in front of me. "Really?" He reached out and cupped my cheeks as the swing slowed. "Really?" I giggled. "A hero is better than a princess." He nodded, chuckling. "And you, my love, are going to be the best of them all." The swing stopped, his hand warm on my shoulder as he steadied me. His eyes were on the horizon, where the first stars began to glimmer. A chill swept through the air, but I didn't shiver. I was never cold when my daddy surrounded me with his warmth. "Promise me something, Seraphina." I blinked up at him. I had his eyes. I loved that I had his eyes. "What?" "That you'll never let anyone tell you your worth, not even me. You'll decide who you are. You'll fight for it, even if the whole world stands against you." "I promise," I whispered, though my voice trembled. He smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "That's my girl." The dream wavered then, blurring around the edges. The oak tree stretched taller, the stars dimmed, and his voice grew distant, echoing through the thinning air. "Remember, little wolf, you were always meant for more." I reached for him, desperate, but my hands closed around nothing. The swing vanished. The garden dissolved into mist. And I woke with tears streaming silently down my cheeks. Seraphina's pove. For a long time I just sat there in the dark, hugging my knees and staring out at nothing. My vision warped as hot tears slid down my cheeks unhindered. My father's voice lingered like smoke after a fire, soft, elusive. "You were always meant for more." I closed my eyes and pressed the heels of my palms against my lids, as if I could hold on to him if I just pressed hard enough. But the dream was already rapidly fading, an echo I couldn't chase down, no matter how hard I tried. When I opened my eyes, all that greeted me was the gradual, dim wash of dawn spilling in through the cracks of my blinds. And the worst part? Confusion tangled with the yawning ache in my chest. I couldn't tell if my dream was a memory or invention. Had my father truly said those words to me once in the garden of my childhood? Or was I so starved for comfort, had I been so triggered by my mother's visit and that damn pie, that my mind had conjured those tender moments wholesale? Whenever I dared to summon thoughts of my father, all that surfaced were the harsh, malicious glares he always shot at me, as if I were his greatest mistake. All I could remember was the cruel anger in his voice as he disowned me. "From this day forward, you are no daughter of mine. Your birth was a mistake, Seraphina." How could that have been the same man in my dream, stroking my hair and telling me I was precious? An anguished groan tore out of my throat as I dragged my hands down my face. I couldn't afford emotional turmoil like this. Not today. Memory or illusion, both were dangerous, and I couldn't afford to have them soften or dull my edges when I needed them sharp. I needed to get my ass out of bed, clear my mind, and face what the day had in store for me. Because today was the second challenge of the LST. The second arena was called the Resonant Labyrinth. The entrance yawned before us, a maw of shifting walls that ground against each other with a groan like mountains waking. Towering slabs slid and reformed with the patience of melting glaciers, but the precision of clockwork. It was basically a gigantic puzzle cut out of stone. While the misty woods had been an arena of muscle and reflex and instinct, this one required us to rely on our minds more than anything else. Once again, I'd ingested the instructions and chanted them back to myself repeatedly. 6 hours. Navigate the maze. Reach the echo altar at the center. Strike the correct sequence. Escape. Safe to say, this new weight pressed on my lungs like a vice. The walls were etched with strange markings, curves and slashes, dots and crescents, spirals that pulsed faintly as if they had been carved with living flame. At first glance, the symbols looked like abstract art, something one might dismiss as decoration. But they were crucial to the challenge. They held the sequence that would release us from the maze. Hell of a place, Roxy muttered, cracking her knuckles like she was preparing to punch her way through the walls of stone. Her reflection gleamed faintly in the polished wall. Bet I could smash through 3 turns in and shave hours off our time. Oh gods, she was actually considering it? I bit back a sigh. Or trigger every trap in the maze and bury us all alive. She shot me a sharp look. I returned it with an arched brow. We'd had such a nice time after the last trial. I really hoped we wouldn't so quickly revert to our initial dynamic. Judy rolled her eyes. How about we try brains before brawn, yeah? Finn had already stepped closer to the wall, fingers hovering just shy of the symbols. His eyes narrowed in concentration. These aren't random. His voice was low, reverent almost. Their notation. I blinked at him. Like musical notation? He nodded, his lips twitching at the corners in a show of rare excitement. Ancient wolf tribe music. My grandfather taught me to recognize fragments. I've only ever seen scraps in books, but this is an entire lexicon. I leaned closer, my pulse quickening as I recognized some of the markings. He was right. The arrangement wasn't arbitrary, the lines repeated in measured intervals, dots clustered like staccato notes. It was rhythm, a language of sound carved into stone. I knew the books Finn referred to. The Lockwood Library had been full of them, and I'd had plenty of alone time to peruse through a bunch. My mind immediately began to work, patterns sparking like tinder catching flame. If the walls are notation, then the altar's passcode must be a composition. Finn shifted to the other side of the maze, squinting at little raised grooves, almost like buttons, with markings that matched the notes on our side. He pressed one, and a resonant ding rang through the air. He leaned back, nodding to himself. You're right, Sarah. Each corresponding note should lead us through the maze, and the culmination should be the final sequence. I smiled, cracking my neck. Right then, let's get to work. We quickly divided roles. Finn and I became the code-breaking duo, our eyes fixed on the walls, trading rapid theories and testing patterns against memory. He pointed out symbols I didn't recognize, that explaining their meaning, their tempo. In return, I aligned them into sequences, measuring beats with my fingertips against my thigh. Meanwhile, on the other side of the passages, Judy was on guard duty, scanning for threats from other teams, while Talia, acting as operator, pressed symbols as I called them out. Each one responded with a tone, sometimes warm and resonant, sometimes shrill enough to make us wince. We worked like that in harmony, a rhythm of our own making, until, of course, we were interrupted. Behind us, Roxy groaned audibly. So what, we crawl through the maze as the two of you hum little songs until something clicks? This is a waste of time. Feel free to wander off again, Roxy, I said flatly, not looking back. I wonder what trap or peril will have to pull you out of this time. That shut her up, though I felt her glare boring into the back of my head. Again, I said to Talia, gesturing toward a spiral etched low on the wall. She obeyed, striking it with 2 fingers. A deep hum filled the corridor, vibrating up through my boots. Yes, Finn breathed. That's the tonic note. We've completed the foundation. I smiled. We were making progress. The new path forked into 3 tunnels, each one lined with a different set of glowing etchings. I was still studying the nearest wall, tracing a sequence with my fingertip, when Roxy lost patience. Again. This is pointless, she snapped. We'll be here all damn day if we continue like this. She planted a hand on one wall and shoved hard, as if sheer force could make the stone reveal its secrets. Roxy, wait! I started, but I was too late. The symbols beneath her palm flared blood-red. A grinding roar tore through the corridor, followed by a hiss that raised every hair on my neck. From the ceiling above, dozens of thin slits snapped open. A volley of needle-like darts whistled downward. Down! I shouted. We threw ourselves flat against the ground. One dart sliced through the air so close to my ear that the wind burned. Another nicked Roxy's arm, tearing fabric, but, thank the gods, not flesh. The stone floor rattled as the barrage clattered around us, embedding into walls with vicious cracks. The assault ended just as suddenly as it had begun. Silence fell, save for everyone's harsh breathing. "Everyone okay?" I panted. Roxy scrambled up, her face pale, her bravado shaken. "I don't," I hissed. I rose slowly, wincing at the ache in my ribs from the harsh landing. I brushed dust from my jacket and fixed her with a level stare. "We're not going through this all over again, Roxy. This isn't just you stuck in a swamp. You almost got us killed because you couldn't stand to wait 30 seconds. Roxy's mouth snapped shut, her eyes lowered like they'd done in Jessica's presence. I exhaled, forcing some calm into my tone. "From now on, you touch nothing unless I tell you. Nothing. You want to help? Fine. Then join Judy and keep watch. Save all that brute force for if we run into another team." Roxy swallowed hard, flexing her grazed arm. "You're right," she muttered. "I'm sorry." I nodded. "Thank you." She stepped back and took the rear, her eyes darting around for danger. I exhaled, turning back to the rest of my ruffled team. "Everyone okay?" Though a little worse for wear, they all nodded simultaneously. "Good." I nodded to Finn. "Let's get back to it." We fell back into harmony, and minutes blurred as the maze shifted around us. Corridors collapsed, new paths opened, and slowly but surely we made our way deeper and deeper into the heart of the maze. Then it happened. Judy and Talia had gone ahead a few feet to test a series of symbols when the ground trembled beneath us. With a deafening grind, the passage they were in began to narrow, 2 massive slabs sliding inward like jaws closing. Fear lodged in my throat. Shit! Had I called out the wrong sequence? Was this a result of another team's actions? Either way, we were about to be separated, and half a team was no team. "Judy! Talia!" I shouted, sprinting forward. The slabs were moving too fast for them to pass through without the risk of being crushed. Judy braced her shoulder against the stone, muscles straining, face twisted in effort. "It's no use, I can't." A scream tore through the corridor, and shock displaced my fear when I saw that it was coming from Talia. Her entire body trembled, and in her eyes, fear and strange fury twisted together until something inside her seemed to snap free. With a sound that was half sob, half snarl, she hurled herself against the moving slab. My eyes widened. There was no way she could bear the weight of the moving wall. "Talia, no." But in that moment, I could almost see the raw, desperate power surging through her. Her hands dug into the stone, her feet bracing on the floor, and the wall shuddered like it was hesitating. Just long enough. I was frozen in shock, but Judy seized the precious extra time they'd been given and shoved Talia forward, rolling both of them into safety as the slabs slammed shut with bone-rattling finality. Stunned silence followed. My heart thundered in my ears. Roxy was the first to break it, awe dripping from every syllable. Holy shit. Talia lay gasping, face pale, but her body was unbroken. Her eyes were wide, disbelieving of her own strength. I crouched beside her, touching her shoulder gently. "Talia, that was amazing." She shook her head, wincing as she sat up. "I don't know how." "It doesn't matter how," Judy said softly, brushing hair from Talia's damp forehead. Her own eyes glistened. "You just did it." Talia let out an incredulous breath. "Yeah, I guess I did." I took her hand and pulled her to her feet. She swayed slightly, and I gripped her elbow to support her. "Well done," I said proudly. Her cheeks tinged pink, and because I knew how heavy and uncomfortable the weight of praise could be, I changed the topic. "Come on, guys," I said to the rest of the team. "What do you say we make it through the rest of the maze without incident?" Judy rolled her neck, glaring at the wall that had almost crushed her. Amen to that. The rest of the journey passed with renewed vigor. The maze wasn't only a test of knowledge. Just like the misty woods, it was testing our limits, our bonds, the very boundaries of what we thought we were capable of. And somehow, against every odd stacked against us, we reached the heart of it. The echo altar loomed before us, an ancient-looking dais of black stone carved with spirals and crescents, its surface inlaid with silver that gleamed faintly like moonlight. Symbols radiated outward from it in concentric rings, humming softly as though it eagerly awaited the right rhythm. "Fucking finally," Roxy muttered as the tension uncoiled from her shoulders. Finn and I locked eyes, and he gave me a gentle, reassuring nod. I approached the altar, hands trembling slightly as I traced the first notes. My mind assembled the sequence we had pieced together, and as I raised my hand to strike the first beat, the chamber doors on the far side exploded inward. Dust clouded the air, heavy footsteps echoing through the visual haze. When the dust cleared, my stomach sank right down to the stone floor as the newcomers came into view. Brinjar and the rest of the Shadowclaw team. Ah, fuck. Seraphina's Pove. Facing off against Brinjar and his Shadowclaw thugs in a hotel lobby surrounded by spectators, aka witnesses, was one thing. Facing them in the lawless, cold walls of the trials was fucking terrifying. As they stormed into the chamber, the atmosphere thickened like smoke choking a fire. Dust billowed in from the shattered entryway, carrying the acrid stench of scorched stone and the metallic tang of blood. And oh gods, they looked like hell. Cuts striped their arms and faces and torsos, visible through their torn shirts. One guy's sleeve was slick with crimson from a wound that hadn't even clotted yet. I could practically smell the charred singe of burned fabric where one of them must have triggered a fire trap. It was obvious that this band of meat-for-brains wolves had strong-armed their way through the maze, triggering gods knew how many traps to get here. Yet despite the evidence of their struggle, Brinjar's grin spread wide. His dark eyes landed immediately on the altar behind me, and for a flicker of a second, I saw his triumph falter into rage. Because we were already there. We'd made it before his team. "Well, well," he drawled, his voice dripping with both exhaustion and arrogance. Mainly arrogance. "Looks like the pups beat us to the feast." His teammates spread out, boxing us in like hungry hyenas circling a meal, shoulders squared, fists flexing, their battered state doing nothing to soften the menace radiating from them. "Back up," Roxy growled, her voice vibrating with the promise of violence. She planted herself at my right shoulder, chin lifted, hands curling into fists. "You're not touching this altar." I could feel the heat of her anger, ready to ignite at the slightest spark, and it was reassuring, but only slightly. As strong as I knew she was in combat, as good as I was, the 5 of us didn't stand a chance against the 5 of them. A fight would only end with several broken bones and my team's blood coating the echo altar. "Easy," Judy murmured, stepping close enough to Roxy to lay a grounding hand on her arm. "Don't let him rile you." Brinjar's lips twisted, amusement flickering. "Cute, you really think you can keep us from it?" His gaze flicked over us, settling on Finn and Talia where they lingered just behind me, instantly sniffing out the weakest of us. He smirked. "You nerds already worked out the sequence, huh? Hand it over, and maybe I'll let you walk away." I moved before he could take another step, instinct shoving myself between Brinjar and the 2 other people who knew the sequence. "Not happening," I said flatly. Finn's hand brushed my back, steadying, but I didn't let him step out from behind me. Not a chance. Brinjar tilted his head, eyes narrowing. "I've no problem taking what I want. In fact," he cracked his knuckles, his lips curling menacingly, "I look forward to it." For a terrifying heartbeat, I thought he'd lunge. His shoulders rolled with barely contained impatience. His men tightened their circle. But then Judy stepped forward. "Or," she said coolly, "you could do things by the rules for once in your life." Brinjar snorted. "Rules?" "Yes," Judy said, her tone sharp, deliberate. She squared her shoulders, looking every inch the warrior she was training to be. "The trials allow challenges between competitors. If you're so desperate to prove you're better, then call off your pack of dogs and face me one-on-one." My stomach swooped. "Judy." She ignored me, and instead stooped, dragging the edge of her boot against the dusty stone floor. Everyone watched with bated breath as she moved, until a rough circle enclosed the space between us and the Shadowclaw wolves. "Circle challenge," she announced, lifting her chin. Step out of the boundary and you lose. Winner claims the altar. I sucked in a sharp breath, my eyes widening as the challenge hung in the air. Silence followed, broken only by the grinding shift of the maze's distant walls. Brynjar's lips curled slowly, baring his teeth. You against me? He chuckled, the sound thick with disdain. You're smaller than my shadow. Size doesn't matter, Judy shot back. Unless you're afraid of being outsmarted by an Omega? The air seemed to crackle with tension as Brynjar reeled from the jab. He quickly recovered and barked out a laugh. Afraid? Not a chance. He cracked his neck, then gestured to his men to step back. Fine, I'll knock you clear out of your little circle, he snarled. Maybe break a couple of your twig bones while I'm at it. She snorted and took a step forward. I caught her wrist, staring at her boot within the circle's boundary with trepidation. Judy, think this through. She turned to me, and our eyes met. I blinked at the sheer confidence I saw there, not a lick of fear in sight. Trust me, she murmured under her breath, and God's help me, despite how ridiculous and scary the notion of her facing a walking boulder like Brynjar, I did. So I nodded and let my hand drop to my side. Kick his ass, I whispered. Her lips twitched. You don't have to tell me twice. They squared off inside the circle. Brynjar rolled his shoulders, cocky swagger dripping off every movement. Judy, in contrast, stood light on her feet, eyes sharp, calm as a blade balanced on a fingertip. Of course, Brynjar lunged first, all brute strength and no restraint. I winced as his fist cut through the air, aiming straight for Judy's head. She ducked in one fluid, effortless movement that would have made Maya proud. His momentum carried him dangerously close to the circle's edge before he caught himself and spun around with a snarl. Judy danced just out of reach, forcing him to chase her within the circle. He lunged blindly, ego and rising fury carrying him, and she always ducked just slightly out of reach enough to infuriate him further. She rarely struck, but when she did, it was quick and surgical. An elbow to his ribs where a bruise was visible through his torn shirt, a kick to his thigh where a gash shone through. Hits that would never have fazed a powerful beta like Brynjar slowly but surely affected him, each jab pulling a pained grunt from him and adding to his imbalance. The shadow claws shouted in outrage, but I raised my voice above them. It's a fair challenge. You interfere and I call the judges. I had no idea how I would get the judges involved, but that shut them up, though their glares promised violence if Brynjar failed. And fuck was he failing. Again and again, Judy baited him into overcommitting. His strikes were wild and increasingly erratic, while she slipped through the gaps, making him stumble closer and closer to the circle's edge. Stand and fight me, he roared after she ducked another swing. Not the point of the challenge, she said evenly, sidestepping as he lunged with all his weight. She twisted, hooked his leg, and gave the barest shove to his already unstable balance. His boot skidded over the line. Half a step, but enough. Out, Judy said, her voice steady as the chamber erupted in gasps. Brynjar froze, chest heaving, eyes flickering between disbelief and outrage. You cheated, he snarled. You tricked me. No, I cut in, stepping forward before he could spit more lies. My voice rang with steel I didn't even know I had. She beat you fairly, within the rules. Screw the fucking rules, he snarled. When I'm through with you, Omega filth, they'll be able to fit all of your remains into one bucket. My breath lodged as, simultaneously, all 5 Shadow Claw wolves charged at us. But an electrical crackle charged the air. Halt! The 5 of them froze like they'd slammed into an invisible wall. Shadow Claw wolves. A disembodied voice echoed all around us, bouncing off the walls to create an almost ominous effect. The challenge was legitimate. Victory belongs to the contender. Honor the terms of the challenge. Brynjar snarled, glaring up at the sky. Furthermore, the voice continued, your team has repeatedly violated the labyrinth's protocols, forcing passages, triggering traps intended to be navigated. One more offense will result in official sanction, the public tarnishing of your pack's record, and the possibility of elimination from the trials. Brynjar froze. His men shifted uncomfortably, the weight of the warning crushing their bravado. I saw it, the raw hatred twisting his face. He wanted to tear us limb from limb, but the rules he hated so much shackled him, his fists clenched at his sides, knuckles white. This isn't over, he hissed, low enough for only me to hear. No, I agreed quietly, meeting his gaze without flinching. It's not, but today isn't yours. With a wordless snarl, he spun and stalked toward another exit, his humiliated teammates trailing after him. The maze swallowed them, their curses fading into the grinding of stone. The moment the last shadow claw vanished, I released another heavy breath of relief. "Holy shit," Roxy muttered, eyes wide as she turned to Judy. "You absolute fucking legend." Judy shrugged, though the faintest smile tugged at her lips. He made it easy. "Easy?" Roxy barked a laugh. "You just played that gigantic hunk of muscle like a fiddle. I'm never talking back to you again." Judy snorted. "You probably will." Despite the tension, laughter rippled through us, loosening something tight in my chest. We were still standing. We'd survived Brynjar's fury, and now I turned back. The echo altar pulsed with faint light, still waiting. Finn met my gaze, his expression calm but expectant. "It's time," I murmured. My hands hovered above the cymbals. The rhythm we'd pieced together thrummed in my mind, a silent drumbeat guiding my fingers. Tap, tap, pause, slide. The tones resonated through the chamber, notes vibrating against my bones, echoing off the walls. A deep hum joined, rising, swelling, until the final strike reverberated like thunder rolling across mountains. The altar blazed. Stone groaned as the exit door carved itself open, slabs shifting aside to reveal a tunnel glowing with golden light. We had done it. Applause erupted, not from my team, but from beyond the chamber. As we stepped into the light, I realized we weren't just exiting into another corridor. The passage spilled out into the arena's stands, where spectators roared in celebration. I blinked into the brightness, heart pounding. All around the stadium, other groups were lingering, clapping themselves on the back and jubilating. I recognized Cypress Vale, Seabreeze, and Granite Fang, who'd exited the labyrinth ahead of us. But then I scanned the floor again, searching. And it hit me. Jessica's team wasn't here. We were the first OTS team out. Roxy whooped, throwing her fists in the air. Judy laughed with unguarded joy. Talia clung to Finn's arm, wide-eyed, as if she couldn't tell if this was real. And me. I turned slowly, letting the moment wash over me. That's when I saw her. Celeste. She stood with the Frostbane group, in the center, her golden hair immaculate despite being coated by a light layer of dust. Her lips curved into that familiar, smug smile as she drank in the applause. Our eyes locked across the distance, and for one brief, sharp instant the roar of applause dulled to silence. Her smile didn't falter. Mine didn't either. But my stomach twisted. I'd known that, with Celeste's participation in the LST, a confrontation was inevitable. The trials, mine at least, were far from over. Serafina's Pove. I broke eye contact with Celeste first, as my team was ushered towards the rest area, the roar of the crowd still ringing faintly in my ears. Our surroundings buzzed with the restless energy of teams regrouping, healers weaving between them, and spectators craning their necks from the terraces above. My lungs burned, my ribs still throbbing, from the desperate dive I took to avoid the labyrinth's traps. Each breath scraped against exhaustion and raw relief. My teammates clustered close. Judy was flush with delight. Roxy stretched her shoulders like she was still spoiling for the fight she hadn't gotten. Finn looked pale, but his eyes gleamed with pride, his hands twitching nervously as though he was still working out combinations in his head. Talia lingered at the back, chin raised despite the tremor in her legs. But the glow of triumph flickered out as a too familiar perfume cut through the salt-scented air, jasmine with the bitter edge of snake venom. I braced myself. Here we go. I guess congratulations are in order. Celeste's voice was honeyed, sweetened for the audience, but the toxin beneath it was unmistakable. She swept into view with the grace of someone who had never once fallen in the mud she ordered others to clean. Where the rest of us looked like we'd crawled through a brutal sandstorm, she looked like she'd walked out of a ballroom. Not a strand of hair was out of place, and her white blouse, fucking white, gleamed, untouched by the grit and grime around us. I gritted my teeth and didn't reply, clinging to my composure. I could sense my irritation rising, waiting for her to add the barbed tale of her statement. Dear Celeste didn't disappoint. She held her hands out in front of her, positioning her fingers like a square frame, and chuckled as she peered through. What a sight, the triumphant little underdogs. Her lips stretched as her gaze swept over us. Scuffed boots, sweat-soaked clothes, tangled, dust-coated hair, blooming bruises. Disheveled doesn't even begin to cover it. She dropped her hands and shrugged. Though I suppose that's what happens when one takes on a challenge they aren't qualified for. I exhaled slowly through my nose and chanted loudly in my head, "Don't bite. Don't give her the satisfaction." But then she leaned back, pitching her voice just loudly enough for nearby ears to catch. "Of course, I shouldn't be surprised you managed to stumble out of the labyrinth alive. I suppose we have Lucien to thank for that. Without his special attention, I can't imagine how you would have survived in there." Heat prickled up my neck. My fists clenched, nails biting into my palms. This was exactly why Lucien and Maya had had to distance themselves from me, so that vultures like Celeste wouldn't pick apart their honor. And mine. "Careful, Celeste," I said evenly, though my voice was tighter than I wanted. She scoffed. "What? Like it's news that you're Lucien Reed's favorite little pet project?" She leaned in, sneering. "Everyone knows the truth, Sarah. Whatever you and your motley team accomplish in these trials isn't earned by your own merit." My teammates shifted, and I could feel their gazes on me, waiting for my response. My heart battered my ribs as the heat spread to my chest. After what we'd just gone through, the idea of Celeste, or anyone, insinuating that we didn't deserve to pass made me want to breathe fire. The injustice of it burned, tightening every muscle in my body and threatening to unravel all the pride I'd felt moments before. But then I glimpsed the delight in her icy eyes, saw how much pleasure she took from riling me up, and decided to give her a taste of her own medicine. So I took 2 deep breaths to calm myself down, and I crossed my arms. A spark of satisfaction went through me when she blinked at my sudden switch up from ire to ease. "If we're talking about special treatment," I continued, forcing my voice steady, "then let's not forget that Kieran himself drilled me before the trials, or that our dear brother Ethan spent hours teaching me strategy. So if I'm accused of being favored, at least let's not pretend it was only Lucien." I smirked. "Seems like I've been collecting wisdom from all the golden alphas. Of course, that was all a bald-faced lie. Kieran hadn't so much as given me stance tips, Ethan had crashed one lesson, and Lucien hadn't trained me since Maya took over. But oh, the look on Celeste's face. Imagine a tomato, then poke a hole in it and pump juice in, more, till it's so full it's about to pop. Now, give it curly golden hair and glacial blue eyes. So fucking worth it." I had to clamp my mouth shut to keep from bursting into laughter as satisfaction rushed through me. My teammates had no such reservations. Judy snorted outright. Roxy smirked. Talia turned, clamping a hand firmly over her mouth to muffle her giggles. Even Finn cracked a small smile. For a second, there was only the sound of Celeste breathing like an overheated engine, her tomato face looking primed to burst. I tilted my head, raising a brow in mock concern. "Problem?" Her mouth opened and closed, and I saw the exact moment she realized that she had nothing in her arsenal that could counter my attack. So she turned to my teammates. "Tell me this." I stiffened as her gaze slid slowly, pointedly across each member of my team. "How does it feel, following someone wolfless? Someone so fundamentally incomplete? Someone who's basically dead weight?" Each question landed with the force of a meteor, and I had to press my hands tightly against my thighs to keep them from trembling. "Does it inspire confidence?" Celeste's expression morphed into one of pity. "Or do you simply grit your teeth and pray she doesn't drag you down?" And there it was, proof that no matter how much I reinforced my armor, Celeste would always find the chink, the entryway to wound me. A familiar ache pulsed in my head. My wolf's silence, the hollow where her voice should have been. I didn't turn to my team. This time, I didn't want to see their reactions. Jessica, even Roxy herself, had pointed out the disadvantage of a wolfless leader, but this was the first time it actually hit home. And gods, I hated how familiar the sting of humiliation felt. Fucking Celeste. A bark of laughter startled me, and I instinctively turned towards the sound. Roxy stepped forward, crossing her arms over her chest, her legs planted in a fighting stance. "Tell me this, you self-righteous harpy," she said, eyes gleaming dangerously. "What was the composition for the echo altar?" Celeste faltered. "Excuse me." She flinched as Judy moved closer and grabbed a lock of hair in her hand. "Barely any dust," Judy sked. "I bet you just stayed safe and protected, trailing behind your team. What do you know about leading?" Roxy smirked. "I doubt you could even lead an army of ants." Judy snorted so loud, I startled again. She and Roxy shared a knowing look. Celeste's face was back to tomato red. How dare? Roxy didn't let her finish. She gave Celeste a sharp shove to the shoulder, not enough to knock her down, but enough to make her stumble half a step. You want to talk about dead weight? Look in a mirror, bitch. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Even I froze, caught between shock and a sudden, fierce swell of gratitude. Roxy, snarky and reckless and hot-headed, was defending me. If I looked outside, I was sure I would see pigs flying. Celeste's hand flew to her shoulder, eyes flashing with outrage. You? That's enough. The voice was calm and measured, yet it rang through the courtyard like a gong. A tall woman stepped forward from behind Celeste, bronze skin slick with sweat, dark hair shorn to her scalp and crusted with grit, eyes keen as silver daggers. She exuded authority, the kind born not of bloodlines but of battle. Alara, Celeste hissed, scandalized. She just assaulted me. She stabbed a finger at Roxy. You're just going to let her? Considering you provoked it? Alara arched a brow, a piercing glinting in the late sunlight. Yes, I'll allow it. The corners of my vision blurred as recognition hit me. Alara? My voice came out softer than I meant, disbelieving, awed. Her gaze flicked to me and softened. Hi, Sarah. I let out a disbelieving laugh. Alara's father had been my father's gamma. She'd been among the very, very few pack members who hadn't shown me cruelty or treated me like I was a walking pile of steaming feces. We weren't exactly friends, but her presence had never made me want to cower in my skin. I had only a handful of good memories from my Frostbane days, and Alara was in many of them. A kind smile in a sea of cruel faces, an outstretched hand after I had been kicked into the dirt. A slice of pie waiting outside my door the morning after I'd locked myself in my room to cry. A foot stuck out to trip the assholes who thought it fun to chase the wolfless outcast. But then she'd enrolled in the Warrior Academy just before the Blood Moon hunt. And of course, shortly after that disastrous night, I married Kieran and left my pack. You, I swallowed, words tangling in my throat. You're Ethan's gamma now, Alara said simply, pride glowing in her voice. Appointed last spring. Celeste was still standing inches away, bristling with indignation, but that didn't stop the smile that spread across my face. Alara, that's incredible. Congratulations. Her grin matched mine. And look at you, leading a team through the LST? I was watching the rebroadcast of your team's progress. Outstanding, Sarah. Never one to be shoved aside, Celeste cut in, acid dripping from her words as she sneered. Oh, what a touching reunion. Shall we all sit in a circle and braid each other's hair next? Her eyes narrowed at Alara. Don't forget, Alara, we're rivals now. Alara didn't even look at her. It isn't challenge time, she said coolly. And if I recall, the only one stirring conflict here is you. Do you know how annoying it is that a member of my team is too busy trash-talking to be present for debrief? Celeste sputtered. I was. You were provoking other teams, which is against regulations. Alara's tone sharpened. We would have made better time. Our overall scores would be better if you spent half as much energy pulling your weight instead of posturing like a fucking peacock. Celeste's face went rigid, her practiced composure cracking. You. How dare you speak to me like that? Easily, Alara said almost boredly. Celeste bared her teeth. I wonder if she knew how truly ugly she looked when she got like this. You've forgotten that I'm your alpha's sister. She spat. And the future Luna of Nightfang Pack. I refused to acknowledge the tiny jolt the last part of her sentence sent through me. Alara wasn't fazed in the slightest. I'm only going to say this once, Celeste, so listen well. Here, your princess status means absolutely nothing. She took a step forward till her scruffy boots touched Celeste's pristine ones. Celeste had to crane her head back to meet Alara's eyes. I am the leader of the Frostbane team. Alara continued, and therefore I am your superior. Put your stupid fucking ego aside and try not to drag us down any further. Got it? The courtyard went still. Even the murmuring spectators hushed, straining to catch every word. For once, Celeste didn't have a ready retort. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, but no sound came out. Her cheeks burned crimson, eyes glittering with humiliation. Alara arched a brow. Now, would you like to continue embarrassing your pack, or do you want to focus on the final challenge? Silence stretched like a rubber band, bound to snap at any moment. Then Celeste spun on her heels, hair swinging behind her as she stalked back toward her waiting teammates. Only when she was gone did Alara exhale, rolling her shoulders as though shaking off the weight of Celeste's tantrum. She turned back to me and smirked. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely am I to be gifted a knife in my back? I laughed, a little breathless. 11. But she's so braggadocious, she'd probably announce her attack to the world before she actually tried it. Alara laughed. I have to get back to my team before one of them loses their last shred of patience and strangles her. I nodded. It was so good to see you, Alara. She winked as she began to back away. We should catch up properly once this whole circus is over. Drinks are on me. I smiled. I'd like that. Seraphina's Pove. The debrief felt longer than the time in the resonant labyrinth itself. We were herded into one of the OTS conference rooms, still carrying dust in our hair and bruises on our bodies. The adrenaline that had carried us through the labyrinth had long since burned out, leaving only raw weariness behind. An instructor droned on about strengths displayed and areas for improvement, but all I could focus on was the ache in my legs and the image of the warm bath I would draw when I got home. Judy kept yawning into her sleeve, swaying like she was about to faceplant onto the desk. Roxy fidgeted through the entire thing, tapping her nails against the table until the instructor snapped at her, and she nearly bit his head off. Finn, the model student, nodded solemnly at every comment like he was filing it all away for future examinations. Talia sat quietly, though her hands were still trembling faintly. I suspected that no matter how much time had passed, she was still reeling from the shocking show of power she'd exhibited in the labyrinth, unable to let the adrenaline go. When we were finally dismissed, we spilled into the night air like prisoners set free. Never again, Roxy groaned, throwing her head back. Never again am I sitting through a lecture about team cohesion. I'd rather drown in a swamp in the misty woods. Judy snorted. That's funny coming from you, considering you nearly turned us all into pincushions. Hey, Roxy snapped, though there was no bite behind it. I was stress-testing the traps. You definitely stress-tested my spleen, Finn muttered. Despite my exhaustion, I found myself smiling. The bickering didn't feel sharp anymore. It was the easy kind. The tension from before had melted away, replaced by banter born from surviving something together. Relief eased my shoulders. This shift in our dynamic was welcome, almost precious. Unfortunately, I was 2 seconds away from passing out to fully appreciate it. All right, I said, clapping my hands together lightly. That's enough excitement for one day. Go home, sleep. Let your bones remember what it feels like not to move. Now that, Roxy said, stretching like a cat out in the sun, is an instruction I have absolutely no problem following. I laughed softly as Judy snorted. But then Finn surprised me. Wait, before we all go home, His ears turned red as we all blinked at him. We should make a group chat, just to, coordinate, share strategies, or memes? Memes? Roxy echoed, looking at him like he'd just grown another head. His blush deepened, and I had the ridiculous urge to squeeze his cheeks. I just thought it'd be nice. I fully expected Roxy to shut him down. I could almost hear her readying some cutting remark about wasting time on stupid social crap. But instead, after a beat, she shrugged. Fine, whatever. Just don't add me to some never-ending notification hell. If my phone blows up at 3 a.m., I'll kill all of you before the next challenge can. Finn's grin was so startled, so openly relieved, that I felt something warm bloom in my chest. Within minutes, numbers were exchanged, with Judy taking charge of setting everything up. My phone buzzed a few times before I even left the vicinity. We need a team name. Judy. Name suggestions. The Survivors? The Misfits? Trap Dodgers? Trap Dodgers make us sound like cowards. Hard pass. Talia, I like Misfits. It fits us. Makes us sound like we can't get our act together. Which is pretty accurate, lol. I was thinking something more distinguished, like Echo Squad, to commemorate the labyrinth. Distinguished? What are we? A senior citizens bowling team. We would look super cute in matching polo shirts with embroidered logos. Lovely. Now I have that nauseating visual burned into my brain. Judy, you're welcome. I let out a snort as I slid into my car. My smile lingered as my phone continued buzzing in the center console while I drove home. Watching them argue about something so trivial after everything we'd been through, felt strangely healing. My teammates weren't just tolerating each other anymore. They were reaching out, connecting, the gap between us shrinking with every grumble and complaint. Later, lying in bed with the lamp turned low, I scrolled through the stream of chatter. Finn had already spammed about a dozen ridiculous memes and GIFs, and he'd somehow managed to edit all our faces onto an actual, honest-to-goodness, senior citizens bowling team. Judy sent voice notes, laughing so hard she snorted in the middle. Even Talia chimed in with the occasional dry one-liner. Roxy didn't contribute much, just a couple of curt comments and emojis, but the fact that she hadn't left the chat spoke volumes. I set my phone aside finally, my jaw aching with the smile that just wouldn't fade. In the span of only a few days, this strange little crew had become something. Not just allies, but a unit, a team. My team. The hollow ache of my missing wolf stirred faintly. Once the thought of leading anyone had seemed laughable, unfathomable. Me, the wolfless girl, the discarded daughter. Yet here I was, watching 4 others slowly, surely orbit closer to me like stars pulled into a constellation. Would having a pack of my own someday feel like this? But amplified 100-fold? Would that invisible bond threading between hearts, souls, and instincts give me strength I'd never dreamed of? The thought made my chest swell. For once, the future didn't feel like a void of uncertainty waiting to swallow me. It felt like possibility, growth. Sleep claimed me before I could overthink it. Goddess bless whoever came up with the LST schedules. The following day was another rest day, and I let myself move at my own pace. I blocked out all the pressures, the anxiety surrounding the last challenge, the lingering weight of the clash with my mother, the subsequent dream about my father, the bout with Celeste, the awkward run-in with Kieran. I slammed a mental door on anything not in line with a restful, peaceful day. I spent most of the morning indoors doing mundane chores and lazing about. But as the day went on and familiar restlessness set in, I changed into a comfortable romper, slipped on sandals, and stepped out of my house. Abandoning my car, I strolled the city streets leisurely, lingering at shop windows, smiling to myself as I imagined Maya and me laughing ourselves to tears as we tried on outrageous items. By late evening, the sun dipped low, and the streets grew livelier. Music spilled from open doorways, laughter and clinking glasses drifting into the cooling air. That was how I found myself pausing outside a bar, neon lights flickering across the cobblestones. Inside, the hum of conversation was vibrant, electric. I hardly ever visited bars. I already had an aversion to alcohol, not to mention that inebriation was not advisable during the LSTs. But then, something inside the bar caught my eye, something playing on the large screens mounted on the walls. I smiled and let my curiosity draw me inside. I chose a stool near the corner of the counter. "Hi, love," the bartender said, her pierced lip curling into a customer-friendly smile. "What will it be?" Just a Coke with ice, please." She nodded. "Not looking for a buzz tonight?" I shook my head. "Not tonight." She shrugged, and a minute later slid me a glass of Coke, the ice softly clinking against the glass. I nodded my thanks before taking a sip, letting the chill soothe me. And then I turned my attention to what had caught my eye. The screens flashed with highlights from yesterday's trials. I watched brief replays of the other team's progress through the labyrinth, saw how quickly and effortlessly the Seabreeze wolves made it to the Echo Altar, winced when the Shadowclaw wolves triggered a haze of fire within the first 2 minutes, and rolled my eyes as Celeste indeed trailed behind the Frostbane wolves, doing absolutely nothing. And then, when they replayed Brynjar's defeat at Judy's hands, the crowd inside erupted into laughter and cheers as I snickered. "OTS is making waves this year," someone at a nearby table said, clinking their glass. "No kidding," their companion replied. "This has to be the best LST yet." "Love the arenas. Did you see the labyrinth run? How that OTS team knocked the Shadowclaw wolves down a peg? Literally my favorite part of the whole thing. Bet they make top rankings. I'm putting money on them." I lowered my gaze into my glass, a battle between pride and disbelief tightening my throat. Strangers' faces I'd never seen before, the majority of them humans, talking about us like we mattered. Like I mattered. It was all so surreal. I was still reeling from the sensation when the bartender appeared again, setting down a small decorated box before me. "Anniversary event. she explained with her polite smile in place. Everyone gets a raffle ticket. Winners get called on stage at the end of the hour for a fun event. I shook my head. I shouldn't. You sure, hon? She asked. You could get lucky. I almost laughed. Me lucky? As if. Still, what was the harm? I slipped a hand into the box and curled my fingers around a slip of paper. I scribbled my name on it half-heartedly before dropping it back in. Time passed, filled with more chatter, more debate about which teams had promise. Talk about my team came up again and again. Each mention sparked a glow deep inside me. Serafina Blackthorn. I paused, my mouth pressed against my straw. I'd withdrawn into myself so much that I hadn't noticed the man on stage, a raffle box in hand, his black suit shimmering under the lights, silver threading through the dark curls of his hair. He must have been talking for a while, but I'd completely phased out, and now... Serafina Blackthorn, he repeated with a grin, his eyes sweeping over the bar. Where's our lucky winner? My stomach lurched. No, surely not. The crowd clapped and whistled, and the bartender gave me a nudge, her smile a little more genuine. I wanted to sink through the floor, but my legs carried me toward the stage, propelled by a strange mix of foreboding and curiosity. But then, halfway up the steps, I came to a halt. Because standing at the other end of the stage, summoned, no doubt, by fate, aka cruelty, was Kieran's Pav. At this point, Sarah was probably convinced I was stalking her, and with how we kept running into each other in the most unlikely places, I wouldn't blame her. To be clear, I wasn't. Byron was an old friend. He'd been pouring me drinks long before I was alpha, long before I thought myself untouchable. He also didn't know the details of who I was, and something about the anonymity always lifted a weight off my shoulder when I was with him. When he invited me to his bar's anniversary celebration, I told myself I'd show up, shake his hand, maybe buy him a congratulatory drink, and leave. I wasn't in the mood for crowds or chatter, not with the gravity of the responsibilities I'd accepted at the LST, and my head buzzing with conflicting thoughts and emotions. And not when Celeste had returned home last night from the last trial in a foul mood, even more so than usual. She'd spent the entire day slamming doors and muttering angrily about insolent leaders and unworthy rivals, whatever the hell that meant. Usually, I would have sought my peace and quiet at Luna Noir, but tonight I felt the need to be far removed from everything wolf-related. Which was ironic, seeing as even the human world was immersed in OTS and the LST. Byron spotted me the moment I walked in. His dark hair had more gray now, but his brown eyes still carried that familiar gleam of mischief as he sidled next to me. He clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. Been a while, old friend. Finally decided to crawl out of your cave, eh? I don't live in a cave, I muttered. You might as well, he chuckled. Come on, sit. Have a drink. You look like you need it. He wasn't wrong. But I let him usher me across the room to a seat tucked in the corner where the shadows were thick enough that I could barely make out the other patrons, and they couldn't see me. Just what I wanted. He slid me a glass of scotch before I could even order. On the house, he said. And lose that scowl. You look like you've been chewing glass all week. Tonight's about fun, Kieran. Leave whatever responsibilities you have and lighten up. Easier said than done. Byron didn't push, though. He never did. It was one of the reasons we'd stayed friends for so long despite our differences in age and species. He kept the drinks coming and the conversation easy, until I felt some more of the tightness in my chest ease. For a moment, the role I would have to fulfill tomorrow ceased to exist. The ire and angst waiting for me at home faded away. Intrusive thoughts of a certain cerulean blue-eyed enigma slipped from my mind, and I could just be. But Byron had other ideas. Come on, he announced after about half an hour, standing as he threw back the rest of his whiskey. I arched a brow, nursing my third glass of scotch. Excuse me, he grinned and leaned forward, gripping my forearm. With a firm pull, he tugged me out of the booth. He was surprisingly strong for a man in his mid-50s, and although I could have easily resisted him, my curiosity let him continue pulling me. And then, before I could process what was happening, he steered me toward the stage and nudged me firmly, leaving me facing the crowd. What the fuck, Byron? I snarled lowly. He ignored me and began talking into the mic. 20 years ago today, my wife and I opened the doors of this very bar, he started with a fond smile. And the reason we picked this day is because it was also our 10th wedding anniversary." He chuckled. "We figured, why not celebrate both at once? A marriage and a bar." She always said they were both about love, trust, and a bit of stubbornness to see them through. My chest clenched when his smile wavered just slightly, touched with memory before he straightened. "So every year on this night, I like to raise a glass to my Lillian and to all of you who've kept this place alive with laughter and stories. And as tradition goes, this is the part you've been waiting for. It's time for our anniversary raffle draw. Let's see who's walking away lucky tonight." My brief moment of sentiment faded away, and I rolled my eyes, debating walking right off the stage. As soon as Byron started calling out other winners of the raffle draw to join us on stage, my gaze fixed on the exit, and I was 2 seconds away from making a run for it when I heard her name. Serafina Blackthorne. My breathing stilled. Surely I'd heard wrong. He couldn't possibly have said. "Serafina Blackthorne," Byron repeated. "Where's our lucky winner?" The lights in the bar were dimmed. The spotlights on the stage made it hard to see the crowd, but even then, my eyes found her, like a magnet to shillings. She sat at the bar, looking as startled as I felt, and hesitated for the barest fraction of a second. But then the crowd's applause and whistles and the gentle nudge of the bartender pushed her forward. She moved through the crowd like a vision conjured by the gods. The lights bounced off her pale hair, setting it off in mesmerizing red and blue hues. Thanks to her training at OTS, her figure had toned considerably, and the romper she wore showed it off like a fucking prize. It took all of my willpower to shove away thoughts of my hands on that body, in my battered car, on the yacht, on the floor of the villa. "Get it together," I chided myself. And then she looked up, and our gazes collided. Her steps faltered, those gorgeous eyes widening. For a heartbeat, the bar disappeared, and we were the only 2 people in the room, in the whole damn world. Just like when I'd run into her in the OTS cafeteria, there were 100 things I wanted to say to her. And just like then, I knew nothing I could say would matter. Not anymore. Boundaries. For a moment I thought she'd turn on her heels and leave. That would have been the sensible thing, the thing she'd been trying to do for the months since our divorce. Keep her distance, keep me at arm's length. But she didn't. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and stepped onto the stage. A dozen emotions warred inside me: relief, dread, hunger, guilt. I clenched my fists and tried to remember what it meant to breathe. The first challenges were harmless enough, icebreakers and party games disguised as competitions. A trivia round, a quick-fire reflex test where you had to slap a button before your opponent. Sarah and I were on opposite ends of the stage, and none of the challenges required us to get closer. She played along with more enthusiasm than I'd expected, her laughter low and sweet, each one loosening more easily than the last. The crowd adored her, and I could barely focus on my tasks. This wasn't the Sarah who once shrank into herself. She seemed larger than life now, as she engaged and competed, and reminded me that she'd become a completely different person. Eventually, the games whittled us down. 2 people were knocked out during trivia, and another couple failed spectacularly at the reflex test. That left 6 competitors: 1 older married couple, Sarah and me, and a pair of college kids who looked like they might suffocate and drop dead if they couldn't touch each other. Byron grinned, clearly delighted by the lineup. And now the final challenge: a battle of teamwork, trust, and quick thinking. And we're going to pair up. My mouth dried up. The pairing was automatic. The older couple held hands, and the girl instantly wrapped her arms around her boyfriend's neck like a koala, which left me and Sarah. I saw her spine stiffen, noticed her hands trembling at her sides as Byron gently placed a hand on her back and eased her towards me, throwing me a wink over her head. The bastard! The stage crew wheeled out a large contraption that looked like a cross between a balance beam and a puzzle board. Colored tiles lit up across its surface, glowing in random sequences. "Here's how it works," Byron explained. "Each pair must cross from one end to the other by stepping only on the tiles that light up in their sequence." But, his grin widened, the sequences are mirrored. That means each partner will see a different pattern, and you'll have to call out instructions to guide each other across. One wrong step, and it's back to the beginning. The crowd whooped. I swore under my breath. Of course, I muttered. A trust exercise. Sarah shot me a sideways glance. Think you can manage that? She'd said the words lightly, but they carried a heavy undertone that I felt deep in my chest. Trust. That was a phenomenon I'd never once related to Sarah. After all, how could you trust someone you never even let yourself know? What about you? I asked lowly. Think you can trust me? Her eyes flicked up to mine, and my breath caught at the sheer intensity of raging emotions that shone in them: betrayal, hurt, detachment. What do you think? She said softly. I dropped my gaze, a lump forming in my throat. Before either of us could say anything else, we were ushered onto the contraption. The tiles pulsed beneath our feet, glowing faintly. The crowd counted down. 3, 2, 1. And the floor lit up. Sarah, 2 steps left, I called out immediately, spotting her sequence. She moved without hesitation. Forward 1, she announced. Then right. We moved in tandem, voices low but firm, calling out corrections as the pattern shifted. The college kids faltered halfway, one of them tripping the reset alarm. The married couple shouted at each other so loudly and chaotically that the crowd erupted in laughter. Sarah and I, though, we moved like one, perfectly in sync. Her voice was confident, precise, never wavering. My body responded before my brain caught up, trusting her instructions implicitly. And when I called the path for her, she followed without a flicker of doubt or uncertainty. We reached the final stretch neck and neck with the married couple. My pulse thundered. One wrong call and it was over. I knew this was just a silly game I shouldn't even have been playing to begin with, but it now felt like the stakes were higher than anything I'd ever done. Diagonal, Sarah shouted. I lunged, caught my balance, and yelled, 2 steps forward. I looked back just in time to see her step onto the last tile. The buzzer blared. The crowd exploded. We'd won, by the barest margin, but still, we'd done it, together. Sarah's eyes found mine, and triumph lit her face. Bright, unguarded, beautiful. My lips parted, blood roared in my ears, adrenaline and something. Acute flooding my veins. My hands shook from the effort it took not to pull her into my arms and spin her in the air. And then Byron returned to the stage, carrying a small velvet box. His voice carried over the cheers. Well done, well done. Our winners tonight, Serafina and Kieran Blackthorne. My heart jackknifed. The way he'd introduced us, like we were still married, like we still belonged together. Gods, there was no way to quantify how that felt. Byron opened the box to reveal a necklace, a delicate silver chain, a pendant shaped like a teardrop with a deep blue stone at its heart. Even from here, I could appreciate the craftsmanship. Precious. This, Byron said, his voice softening, belonged to my late Lillian. She loved this piece more than any other, wore it to every anniversary dance we ever had. Tonight, in her memory, I'd like our winner, he nodded toward Sarah, to wear it. Sarah froze, her face flushing as she stared at the necklace in awe. I can't, Byron chuckled. You can. If I knew my Lillian, she'd be smiling right now, happy to see it shine again. He pressed the box into Sarah's hands. And I have one more request. Her brows lifted, her gaze skeptical. Which is? That you wear it while dancing to Lillian's favorite song, Byron said simply, with Kieran. Serafina's Pove. I should have said no. No. What I should have done was turn around and walk right out the door the moment I laid eyes on Kieran on the stage. But whatever it was, whatever damn invisible thread that still seemed to exist between me and my ex-husband had pulled, and I hadn't resisted as hard as I should have. I'd stayed. I'd played silly little games with him. I'd let his voice guide me through the last challenge. Worst of all, I'd enjoyed every fucking minute. And now, the consequences of my actions. A gorgeous necklace that I hated to admit rivaled the one Lucien had given me. And a dance. I took an instinctive step back. I shouldn't have been here in the first place. I should have been anywhere but in a bar with my ex-husband, contemplating fucking dancing with him. I needed to leave, right now. Go home and prepare for the final challenge. My eyes darted behind Byron, where Kieran stood a little too at ease, a little too nonchalant, like he was forcing himself not to show any readable emotion or reaction. And then Byron spoke. My Lillian's been gone 19 years. His voice was heavy with the weight of grief, yet light with the softness of reverence. Like I mentioned before, today would have been our 30th anniversary. My chest tightened. I'm sorry, I whispered. Byron shook his head. No, don't be. Lillian wasn't one for tears or sorrows. The wistfulness of his smile was like a fist around my heart. When I close my eyes, I can still see her dancing through this bar, the light glancing off her necklace. His eyes shone, not with tears, but with the glow of a man who had loved and been loved completely. I couldn't look away. Won't you grant me this one gift, Sarah? Slowly, without fully realizing what I was doing, I took the necklace out of the box. It lay cold in my palm, the pendant's blue stone winking in the stage light, and though it was feather-light, it felt heavy, heavy with memories, heavy with meaning. A lump formed in my throat. Swallowing hard did nothing to dislodge it. All right, I whispered. The crowd erupted into applause, but I barely heard them. Quite frankly, I'd forgotten they existed. My gaze slid back to Kieran, who'd suddenly tensed. Surprise flickered in his eyes, back as if he'd expected me to reject Byron and walk out. Byron beamed and gave a small bow, stepping out of the way. And suddenly, Kieran and I were the only ones on stage. I hesitated, my heart kicking into a gallop. Every rational instinct pulled me towards the bar's exit. But I'd already made a commitment. I couldn't possibly go back on my word. And then Kieran held his hand out. "Allow me," he murmured. My pulse lurched. It was stupid, I knew. We hadn't even touched. The outstretched arm was barely a gesture, if you could even call it that. For a moment, I didn't realize what he was asking, but then I saw his gaze dart to the necklace, and my heart skipped a gallop. My hand trembled slightly as I held the necklace out. Kieran took it from me with surprising care, the metal glinting between his fingers. I froze as he stepped behind me, his nearness a quiet storm. The brush of his knuckles against my skin as he swept my hair aside sent a shiver racing down my spine. The clasp clicked softly into place, and his touch lingered a second too long before he dropped his hands. Music floated through the speakers, soft, lilting, the unmistakable sound of an old love ballad. When I turned, Kieran's hand was held out again, and slowly, hesitantly, I took it. For a moment, neither of us moved. It always felt like this with Kieran, like time was slowing down, like every move we made had to be felt, savored. I saw him glance down at his large hand dwarfing mine, and I wondered if he was thinking the same thing I was, that this was probably the first time we'd ever held hands after a decade of marriage. And then we moved. Kieran's hand folded around mine, the other settling on the small of my waist. The warmth of his palm seeped through the thin fabric of my romper, searing, unnerving, yet gentle. His grip wasn't iron or rigid, it was steady, tender. And against my will, something inside me softened as I surrendered to the moment. Kieran and I had never had a formal wedding ceremony. Every gala we'd attended as a married couple had been a stiff, awkward event. Basically, we'd never danced together before. I'd never let myself indulge in imagining what it would be like to sway in his arms, but in this moment, I didn't know how to explain his touch. It guided, not demanded. His eyes met mine, searchingly, almost knowingly, like we spoke a silent language only he and I could understand. And I had no way of explaining the tiny arcs of electricity that emanated from everywhere his hands touched me and spread through my body, coursing through my blood vessels. And then, to my quiet dismay, I began to compare. Lucian danced differently, deliberate, calculated charm woven into every movement. Every dance we'd ever shared had been in front of an audience, and though he'd been caring and gentle during, they'd always felt performative. With Kieran, though, there was none of that. No charm, no performance, just presence. I didn't know one could be so consumed by a dance. I didn't realize it was possible, so ridiculously easy, to lose oneself in something as simple as a dance. The music wound through us like a silken thread, tugging me closer than I should have allowed. My heart, traitorous thing, stumbled on an old rhythm, remembering what it was like to adore this man, to want his eyes on me, exactly like they were now, as if I were the only thing in the world that mattered to him. And for a fleeting, frightening heartbeat, I forgot all the reasons this was a terrible, stupid idea. I forgot the long, cold years of distance, forgot Celeste, forgot all the pain. There was only the sway of Kieran's body against mine, the steady rise and fall of his chest, the harmony of his heart beating in sync with mine. Gods, I could have lived the rest of my life in this moment. But then, too fucking soon, the final notes faded and silence fell thick between us. Neither of us moved right away, My eyes were closed, my pulse racing wildly. His breath brushed against my temple, spreading warmth through my entire body. And then I forced my eyes open, tilting my head back. The look in his eyes was undoing. The usual storm had muted into something achingly vulnerable, as if he was holding back a torrent of emotions. And I wanted, gods, I needed, to lean in, to close the distance, Applause erupted around us, and reality returned like a knife in the gut. We released each other slowly, carefully, as though the world might shatter if we moved too fast. Everything that had faded away now returned with startling clarity. The bar, the audience, the ex-husband I had no business dancing with. As the crowd cheered, Byron returned to the stage, clapping, his smile outshining the stage lights. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion as he approached. "You've given me more than you know." He pressed a heavy bottle of red wine into my hands, the glass cool and smooth. This was one of Lillian's treasures, too. We bought it on our honeymoon in Greece and we're saving it for our 30th. I want you to have it. I tried to protest. "Byron, you've already done so much." "I can't." "You can," he said firmly, closing my fingers around it. "And you will. Don't argue with an old man." My laugh came out shaky. "All right, thank you." "No, Sarah, thank you." He patted my shoulder, and in that moment, it wasn't just gratitude in his eyes. It was something like recognition. As if he'd glimpsed through me, seen the shadows I carried, and was offering me some light. The crowd dispersed, drawn back into a chorus of chatter and music. Well, awkward. That was the only way to describe the way I hovered on the stage, my legs refusing to move. I hated the hesitancy, twisting my insides, but a part of me wanted to stay, wanted another song to play, wanted to slip back into Kieran's arms. He offered me a gentle smile, his eyes glowing softly, like he was thinking the same thing I was. "Good night, Sarah," he said softly. I swallowed. The lump still sat firmly in my throat. "Good night, Kieran." And then I forced my legs to move. I slipped from the stage, necklace cool against my throat, wine tucked against my ribs like a fragile secret. And though I didn't turn back, I could feel Kieran's gaze burning into me until I stepped out of sight. Kieran's povee. I stood there like an idiot long after Sarah was gone. The background music continued and the crowd was fizzling out into the late night. Byron had stepped off the stage and was busy thanking patrons. But I couldn't move. The dance still lingered in my muscles, as if her body hadn't truly left my arms. I could still feel the imprint she'd left, the dip of her waist, the silk of her hair, the curve of her hips. Gods, had it always felt that way to hold Sarah? So calming and peaceful and right? With the rogue issues and the LST and ruling my pack, my life over the past couple of weeks had been a frenzy of relentless motion. And then, for 3 minutes under dim bar lights, it had all just stopped. Nothing else existed for me except the echo of her laugh, the rhythm of her heart thudding against my chest, the lavender of her scent permeating my every pore, and it had felt like peace. I didn't even realize I was capable of feeling that kind of serenity until she gave it to me. My hands twitched at my side, and I had to dig my heels into the ground to stop myself from racing out of the bar, finding Sarah, wrapping her in my arms and never letting go. 10 years. I had her with me for 10 years, and I never... So what's the story there? Byron's gruff voice cut through my thoughts, pulling me back to the present. He was beside me again, eyes twinkling like the devil's. "You two have the same last name, but siblings do not look at each other the way you two did." I opened my mouth, then shut it. At this moment, the anonymity I cherished with Byron had turned into an adversary. Because what was I supposed to say? That Sarah had been my wife once? That I'd ruined us both? That divorcing her felt like the biggest mistake I'd ever made? Byron noted my hesitation and nodded, raising his hands in mock surrender. "Fine, I won't pry." I exhaled and ran a hand through my hair. "It's complicated." I internally scoffed. That word didn't even begin to scratch the surface of my relationship with Sarah, but it was all I had right now. "You like her," Byron said simply, not as a question, but as a fact. I froze, like the word felt so small, so trivial. It couldn't capture the complexity of the feelings I had for Sarah. Even I couldn't put a name to it. It was all so complicated and overlapping and conflicting, and like didn't even come close. Byron must have mistaken my silence for bashfulness. "If you do," he continued, "don't waste time. Trust me on this, boy. I wasted plenty when I was falling for Lillian, thinking there would always be another day, and then one morning she was gone. The light in his eyes died, and the grief that flashed there was so intense I had to look away. Just gone. Every day since, I've wished I'd said more, done more, loved her more. His hand landed heavily on my shoulder, grounding and crushing all at once. Don't repeat my mistake. I don't know what the story is, but if she matters to you, and I highly suspect that she does, fight for her. I swallowed hard. My throat felt raw, scraped hollow. How could I explain? That Sarah did matter, more than I'd ever let myself fully acknowledge, but not in any way that could be salvaged. That our bond had been poisoned by disregard and silence, shredded beyond repair. That she looked at me now like a wound that refused to close. I couldn't say any of that, so I just clapped Byron's shoulder back, forcing my voice steady. You honored Lillian well tonight. She'd be proud. His eyes softened as some of the light returned, and he didn't push further. Go on, get out of here before I rope you into singing karaoke. The image of myself butchering some off-key ballad was enough to propel me out the door. The night air hit sharp against my skin, cooling sweat on the back of my neck. As I headed to my car, I resisted every urge and instinct that pulled me in the opposite direction, the direction Sarah would have headed to get to her new home. The moment in the bar had been exactly that, a moment. The reality of my relationship with Sarah was that there was no relationship, nothing left to salvage, nothing left to hold on to. I kept telling myself throughout the drive home. I had a big day ahead of me tomorrow, so I told myself I'd sleep tonight, that maybe the ghost of that dance would lull me into something resembling rest. But the moment I stepped into my house, that illusion shattered. Because Celeste was waiting. She lounged in the foyer chair like she owned the place, legs crossed, a half-empty glass of wine, most likely not her first, dangling from her fingers. Her eyes gleamed in the dim light, sharp and smug. Late night, babe? She purred. Just like that, all the ire and angst I'd let myself forget about returned with a vengeance. So much for peace. My jaw clenched as I turned and slipped my jacket from my shoulders, draping it over the coat rack. The scent of Byron still clung to me, oak casks, smoke, old whiskey. And faintly, Sarah. That trace alone had my chest tightening. I knew the moment Celeste caught it, a storm would break. Well? She pressed. I unclenched my jaw and forced a neutral smile. I was at an old friend's anniversary celebration. Anniversary, she repeated, as though it were a foreign word she was testing. She slowly rose to her feet, tilting her head, lips curving into something between curiosity and accusation. So important you couldn't bring your fiancé? The word landed heavily. Fiancé. We hadn't even officially gotten engaged yet, and she was already throwing the title around. But it wasn't even that word itself that irked me. It was what came next. Wife. Luna, I exhaled quietly, bracing myself. You know why I couldn't bring you, I said, keeping my tone even. You signed up for the LST in secret while knowing that I have a role to play. The rules are strict, Celeste. You've already broken them by insisting on staying here instead of at your pack house. If I'd paraded you around on my arm tonight, every other challenger would have cried favoritism. They would have used it to disqualify you. Her eyes narrowed. So, instead, you went alone? You left me here to twiddle my thumbs while you celebrated with strangers? Not strangers, I corrected, resisting the sigh building up. I told you, Byron's an old friend. Tonight was his 30th wedding anniversary. He and his late wife opened that bar together on the same day. I owed it to him to be there. Her expression softened, and she gave me a clipped nod. Okay. I arched a brow, suspicion holding my relief at bay. Okay, she smiled. Good night, Key. It felt a little too good to be true, but never one to look a gift horse in the mouth. I walked past her further into the house. I had one foot on the first step when her arctic voice froze me in my steps. And what did you owe Sarah? My heart jerked once, hard, like it wanted to leap out of my ribs and run far away from this conversation. Slowly, I turned. Celeste was still standing where I'd left her, but now she had my jacket in her hands, condemnation tightening her features. I smell her, she whispered, her voice trembling despite the sharp edge. You saw her, didn't you? There it was, the inevitable. I sighed, running a hand down my face. It was a coincidence, Celeste. I didn't plan it. She happened to be there, same as me, that's all. Her lips pressed into a thin line, She studied me like she was trying to peel me open and see what was written inside. Celeste. I forced my voice to stay calm, not to betray the exhaustion and irritation I was feeling. It was nothing, okay? Then why can I fucking smell her on you? She hissed. I'll go take a shower right now, I countered. I stepped forward and grabbed the jacket out of her hand. I'll burn all my clothes if you want. Something flickered on her face, determination. And the next thing I knew, she was pressing herself against me, clutching at my shirt with a desperation I recognized. Here we go again. I do want her scent erased, she breathed, her voice dropping low and sultry, but there are other ways. Her mouth grazed my neck, her fingers tugging at the buttons of my shirt. For a moment, I let her, waiting to see if my body would react to hers like it should. I waited for the spark, for heat, for every nerve ending to come alive, with maddening want. But nothing. I caught her wrists gently but firmly, holding them still. Celeste? I kept my voice gentle but let warning permeate it. Tomorrow is the finals. The evidence of what you want to do can't be washed away by a simple shower. And if anyone finds out you've been staying here, it'll ruin everything. You'll be disqualified before you even set foot in the arena. I don't care about the finals, she snapped, pulling against my hold. I care about you, about us. Do you even realize how humiliating it feels to wait here for you while you come home with my fucking sister's scent clinging to you like a mark? The anguish in her voice might have struck me deeper once. Now, it only pressed against a part of me that was growing more numb by the day. As if my ability to feel, at least where she was concerned, was fading. I loosened my grip, forcing calm into my words. Celeste, you've trained too hard to throw it all away now. Don't let needless jealousy rob you of what you've worked for. I cupped her face and gently caressed her cheeks. My promise to you still stands. My parents are preparing the announcement. Once the rogue situation is resolved, we'll be officially engaged. I'll keep my word. Her breathing slowed a fraction, though the tension in her shoulders lingered. Her eyes searched mine, and I hoped to the goddess she couldn't see the conflict in them. You swear it? I bit out the words, I swear it. That soothed her, if only partially. She exhaled, a trembling laugh slipping out, then pivoted, gliding toward the side table at the living room entrance. Her fingers brushed across the sleek music player there, and within seconds, soft piano notes filled the air. She turned back to me with a small, almost wistful smile. Do you recognize this song? I didn't, but thankfully she didn't give me a chance to answer. It's my favorite. I used to play it all the time when we hung out. Right? Then she held her hand out. Dance with me, for old time's sake. The request was harmless enough. It was the least I could do after rejecting her yet again. Yet something in me bristled. I didn't know if it was my wolf or my own conflicted humanity. Still, I stepped forward, resting my hand lightly against her waist as she pressed close. She tilted her head back, eyes shining, lips curved as the music wrapped around us. She leaned into me, her warmth undeniable, the jasmine of her scent purging the lavender that still lingered around me. This is nice, right? She whispered. It should have been more than nice. It should have been perfect. Celeste was beautiful, familiar, mine, supposedly. But as we moved slowly across the polished floor, my chest stayed hollow. The truth gnawed at me. It had felt so easy with Sarah, natural, so blissfully effortless. And now, with Celeste in my arms, I felt only the effort of holding together an image that was already cracking. Now I was caught between duty and desire, between a promise I'd made and a bond that seemed to grow stronger the harder I tried to sever it. Celeste rested her cheek against my chest, humming contentedly with the music, her arms tightening around me as if she could tether me in place, and all I could do was wish she were someone else. Serafina's Pove, the final challenge. The air itself carried a weight that morning, heavy with expectation, anticipation, the unmistakable tang of nerves sharpening every inhale. I remembered back when the LST had seemed like some far-off mountain I couldn't possibly climb, and now here I was, standing at the base of the last summit. The path of the great wolf. One last obstacle. 2 days. One of 3 wild terrains. The officiant's voice rang across the stone platform, each nugget of information hammering anxiety further into my pounding heart. Each team has been randomly assigned to one of 3 simulated wildernesses, Snowfield, Lavaland, Stormridge. Within each lies a gatekeeper boss. They will be the final test of your worthiness. Each of them, portrayed by a powerful alpha, bears 2 talismans around their neck. Your goal is not victory in combat. It is cleverness, speed, unity. Locate the gatekeeper boss and claim a talisman. Reach the endpoint before 48 hours run out. The first team to pass this challenge wins the latent spark trials. The crowd roared from the stands. They were loving the trials, the spectacle of wolves pushed to their limits, of rank and strategy colliding in brutal landscapes. Oh, what I would give right now to be a spectator instead of a participant. Judy's shoulder brushed mine, steady and grounding. Finn stood at my other side, and I could practically hear the gears in his head turning. Roxy cracked her knuckles as usual, looking far too eager for a fight. Talia stood quietly, but her eyes darted between her teammates like she was drawing strength from proximity. "Snowfield," the officiant called out. "OTS Team 1, Team Frostbane." My stomach twisted, but I wasn't even surprised in the least. Of course, my team would be paired with Celeste's. What other outcome could there possibly be? A ripple of whispers tore through the spectators. They knew what this meant. My history with Celeste was no secret, especially after the encounter that had followed the last challenge. This had become more than OTS versus Frostbane. This was now Sarah versus Celeste. Lovely. Celeste's smug face appeared across the platform, framed by golden hair that caught the sunlight like it was spun to blind. She strutted forward with Alara and the rest of her team in tow, cockiness infused in every step. They aligned next to us. Alara gave me a curt but friendly nod, and I returned it before turning to my team. Around us, the officiant continued to announce which of the remaining teams would end up in which arena, reiterating each assignment as he did so. "We've had several trials thrown at us, and we've survived them all, okay?" I said, adding as much confidence into my voice as I could. I met each of their gazes firmly, surely. This one isn't going to be any different. I wouldn't be so sure about that. Celeste's voice carried just enough volume to slice through the chatter around us. I sighed. Here, I thought the last humiliation she'd faced would deter her from making another pass at my team. But I guess a snake just couldn't resist spewing venom wherever it could. I turned and her lips curled as her gaze locked onto me. I mirrored her sneer. "Yes, Celeste? Any juvenile jab you'd like to direct towards me or my team?" Judy snickered as Celeste bared her teeth. "I'm just glad you and I are finally pitched against each other. I'll prove to everyone once and for all why I'm superior to you. I'll show the world why I'm the perfect Luna for Kieran." Unbidden, my mind dredged up memories of last night, me and Kieran swaying in each other's arms, the feeling of wholeness that had enveloped me, the emptiness that had hollowed me out when I curled into my empty bed. But Celeste's words themselves were stale. Same taunt, same old wound she couldn't stop poking at. And with the gravity of what was to come, I refused to waste energy on her recycled barbs. I squared my shoulders, meeting her gaze with cold indifference. "Celeste, I've never opposed your claim. In fact, I'm pretty sure I've told you that you and Kieran are perfect for each other. And honestly, your shit's getting old and repetitive. Maybe find a new opener next time. Or better yet, just leave me the fuck alone." Her eyes flared, the mask of smugness cracking just enough for me to savor. Before she could retort, Alara tugged on her elbow. "I swear to the moon goddess herself. Don't fucking test me today, Celeste." Celeste gaped at Alara. "I'll see you on the other side, Sarah." Alara winked at me, and then dragged Celeste away to the opposite entrance to Snowfield before I could hear the end of her enraged outburst. Roxy let out a low whistle. "What that bitch needs is a leash." Judy grinned, and a muzzle. Finn cracked a smile, and even Talia giggled softly. I didn't have time to examine the feelings that churned in my stomach as the officiant's voice echoed with ominous finality. "All teams, prepare to enter your arenas." The Snowfield Arena was authentic as fuck. Tall pines draped in frost, snow crunching deep beneath our boots, the wind slicing across the air with a mournful howl that had me imagining frost ghosts floating around us. I'd had to switch out Lucian's gift for the specialized clothing we'd been given, a fitted thermal bodysuit, a parka with a fur-lined hood, gloves, and insulated boots. It should have been enough, but as we stepped into the arena, I realized we'd been given the bare minimum. The cold hit instantly, biting at every patch of exposed skin, sinking through the thick layers of our clothes like knives of ice. Our breaths misted in front of us. Even with alpha bloodline coursing through me, the chill scraped at my bones. For Omegas like the rest of my teammates, this terrain was punishment incarnate. The advantage we'd enjoyed in the first challenge had turned around to bite us in the asses. Fuck, Roxy shivered violently. Whose genius idea was it to turn us into popsicles? I shot her a look that said, not now. She shot me a look that said, yes, now. The Frostbane pack is filled with your alpha-born sister, a Gamma, and other high-ranked wolves, she snapped. They're going to traipse through this challenge while we fucking freeze to death. I nodded. Good. Get angry. That'll keep you warm. That'll help us find the gatekeeper boss quickly. She frowned. Was that sarcasm, Alpha-born? I rolled my eyes, adjusting the straps on my pack. Let's just get moving. We need to generate body heat before we start thinking strategy. Yeah, Judy chimed in, rubbing her hands together. Move your legs, Rox, not your mouth. Roxy rolled her eyes but huddled closer as the five of us headed deeper into the arena. Hours bled together in a blur of trudging footsteps, half-formed clues, and white silence broken only by our shivering breaths. We managed to find faint traces of paw prints, massive, deliberate, left by whatever Alpha was playing gatekeeper here, but following them only led us deeper into disorientation. By the time dusk fell, fatigue had muted Judy and Roxy. Talia stumbled more than once, her lips tinged blue, and I swore I could hear Finn's bones clattering together with every move. We couldn't possibly go any further. There, I pointed toward a cave mouth tucked beneath a snow-heavy outcrop of stone. We'll shelter there. No one argued as we changed direction. Inside, the air was blessedly still, though the cold still clung like a second skin. We all collapsed to the ground, our misted breaths of exhaustion mingling. I'm fucking numb, Roxy declared. Talia hugged her legs to herself, violent shivers racking through her body. Wordlessly, Finn moved close to her and wrapped his arms around her. She stiffened for a heartbeat before she sighed and snuggled into him. Now I'm nauseous, Roxy muttered. I rolled my eyes, tossing my backpack at her. Here, you're in charge of our rations. We need warmth, she said, rummaging through the bag, not food. Judy snatched a pack of beef jerky from Roxy's hand. Don't eat then. I'm curious to see if you'll starve or freeze to death. I'm not curious about your death. It's obviously strangulation by my hand, Roxy retorted. Judy reached out and hugged Roxy. Sarah was right, she sighed. You have so much anger in you that you're a walking toaster. Roxy rolled her eyes, but shifted closer to Judy. Shut up, she mumbled half-heartedly. I laughed softly, snagging a pack of beef jerky for myself. Silence fell on us, punctuated by the chattering of my teammates' teeth. Worry gnawed at my insides. We'd barely made it 24 hours, and my teammates were practically out of commission. If I didn't act, we'd never survive the timer, let alone find and outsmart the gatekeeper boss. I'll get firewood, I announced. Roxy sighed, untangling herself from Judy. Let's go. I shook my head, rising to my feet. I'll go alone. Judy frowned. Sarah, that's not a good idea. I'm the only alpha blood here. The cold won't knock me out the way it will you. I forced a reassuring smile. They looked poised to argue again, but I shut them down. I won't be long, I promise. I held up my wrist where my communication band glinted. This was the first time we were given something like this. That had been my first clue that this arena would be the most brutal yet. If anything goes wrong, I'll contact you or the judges or someone. And what if we can't get to you in time? I didn't let myself dwell too long on that. You all just stay alive, okay? I didn't give them a chance to reply before I stepped out. The forest outside was eerily still. Snow muffled my footsteps as I moved between the pines, scanning for fallen branches. I gathered what I could, snapping brittle limbs and stacking them under one arm. I didn't want to venture too far from our shelter, but I needed enough wood to last us through the night and provide a strong enough flame to thaw the chill that had settled in their bones. The deeper I went, the darker it grew. The light bled out into a violet twilight, shadows stretching long and strange across the snow. And then I felt it, a prickling at the nape of my neck. Slowly I turned, heart thudding hard enough to echo in my ears. I couldn't see what the danger was, but I could feel it like an instinctive awareness. My eyes strained as I surveyed my environment, struggling to make out what it was. There, a shift between the trees. A shadow too fluid, too deliberate to be just the wind or snow. Who's there? My voice came out steady, though my pulse was anything but. No answer. Just the faint crunch of snow under a heavy weight. My senses sharpened, pulling in every detail. The faint exhale of breath, the low growl vibrating in the distance. Fear froze the blood in my veins, colder than the snow. I was not alone. Serafina's Pove. The scent hit me first. Wild musk and hunger, raw and untampered. The unseen presence pressed against me like a wall, primal and unrelenting. Every instinct in me screamed, danger. Then I heard it, the crunch of heavy steps, deliberate and slow, somewhere beyond the curtain of trees. Snow displaced with each weighty stride, followed by the low, guttural huff of a massive creature exhaling steam into the frozen air. I couldn't see it yet, but its shadow loomed, and I could guess what it was, a bear, and not a small one. Shit. I shifted my weight slowly, pressing the woodpile closer to me like a flimsy barrier. My first thought, funnily, stupidly, was to shift forms, wolf against bear, fang to fang, claw to claw, but then reality slammed into me like an iron door in my face. I couldn't shift. I might have laughed if I weren't so fucking terrified. I'd trained so rigorously, worked so hard so that I would not be defined by what I lacked, by my one deficiency. But now, none of that mattered, and my weakness would finally truly destroy me. The bear's low growl rumbled through the trees. My pulse spiked so fast I thought I would die of a heart attack before the beast had a chance to even scratch me. The shadow stepped closer, and between the trunks its massive form took shape. Moonlight struck silver against fur as the hulking mass blotted out what little twilight remained. Its coat was mottled white and gray, blending into the snow so well it seemed carved from the very ice. A predator built for this arena, for this exact environment. And its eyes, they gleamed with predatory intelligence, hungry, unwavering, and they were fixed on me. Its prey. I swallowed hard, my throat as dry as bone. Okay. Think. Options. Run? Stupid. I'd be overrun in seconds. Fight? Even stupider, one blow and my skull would cave in. Climb? Maybe not as stupid, but would I be fast enough? My hand twitched toward the communicator band strapped to my wrist. There were people monitoring every challenge, weren't there? They had to intervene if one of us faced actual death, right? I pressed the emergency button at the side, whispering, requesting assistance. Nothing. Just static and the faint crackle of interference. I pressed the other side to link to my teammates' watches. Guys, can you hear me? I need you. More static. The cold must have been disrupting the signal. Damn it, shouldn't they have prepared for that? Or maybe the arena's wards were intentionally dampening communication. In that case, why the fuck did they give us communicators to begin with? Either way, I was on my own. The bear trudged forward. Snow shifted beneath its weight. Powder sprayed around its paws. Every time it moved, its massive shoulders rolled and its breathing grew louder, deeper. My grip on the firewood tightened until bark bit into my skin. My heart raced so hard it hurt, an erratic drumbeat filling my chest. This was it. This was how I was going to die. Torn apart in a frozen arena, my body not even warm enough for a proper pyre. My knees nearly buckled. A sharp, acidic grief welled in my throat as tears brimmed in my eyes. I thought of Daniel, waiting to come home, cheering me on with his whole heart, of my team, huddled in the cave, relying on me to bring back fire. And then, absurdly, I thought of Kieran, of the warmth of his hands on me just last night, far away from danger and ice. I thought of the brilliant fury with which he tore apart the rogues who kidnapped me. If he were here, he would know what to do. He would save me. Despair knifed through me, so sharp I almost doubled over, and in that chasm of hopelessness, when I thought nothing and no one could reach me, left Sarah, a voice, soft, low, threading through my mind like the faintest ripple across still water. Move slowly, don't break eye contact. My breath caught. What the fuck? The bear growled again, shifting its bulk, testing the distance between us. The voice pulsed again, firmer this time. Trust me, Sarah. Move left, now. I obeyed before I could second-guess myself. Step by step, my heart thundering in my chest, I edged left, my boots crunching softly, careful not to make sudden moves. The bear didn't charge. It shifted with me, intelligent eyes tracking held back. Good, the voice soothed, warm despite the ice in my veins. Now, angle your path toward the slope behind you. See it? The ridge with the overhang? I dared a glance with the barest flick of my eyes. Yes, a snow-packed incline leading up to a jagged outcrop. Climb. Keep steady. Don't run. Don't falter. I wanted to scream, "Who are you?" But the bear's rumbling growl silenced me. I swallowed it down and obeyed. 1 step, 2. My boots sank deep into the snow as I climbed the incline. Every move up the slope gave me precious distance. Still, the bear stalked after me, movements ponderous but deadly certain. The voice thrummed again, a steadying cadence against the panic spiraling in my chest. "That's it, Sarah. Don't rush. Breathe. Feel the ground. Trust your instincts. Trust me. Trust me." I clung to the words like a lifeline. At the ridge, I clambered onto the rocks. The firewood tumbled from my arms, scattering across the snow, but I didn't care. I just needed to survive. My palms scraped raw against jagged stone as I scrambled higher. The bear bellowed, a thunderous roar that shook snow loose from branches. My body jolted with fear, but I forced myself onward, nails breaking, boots slipping. Then, blessedly, I crested the ridge. The bear lunged, but the overhang jutted too far. It slammed into the base, claws raking uselessly against the stone. Its roar split the silence, echoing through the trees, a sound of frustrated hunger. I stumbled back, gasping, tears burning my eyes. My legs trembled so violently I nearly collapsed. The bear prowled below, glaring up at me, but the ridge held. Slowly, reluctantly, it turned and lumbered away, its massive form swallowed by the darkening forest. Only when it disappeared completely did I crumple to my knees, sucking in frantic breaths, my body quaking with leftover terror. "Oh gods, oh gods, oh gods, oh gods! It's okay, Sarah, you're safe now." I froze at the sound of the voice again, this time not from surprise, from recognition. I'd heard it before in my dreams, shrouded in mist and mystery. My wolf, tears welled hot, they spilled down my cheeks, steaming in the frozen air. I clutched my chest, the ache inside me breaking open, raw and overwhelming. Was this a dream too? Some cruel trick woven by the arena? Is it, my voice cracked, barely audible, is it really you? A soft hum filled my head, a sound so achingly familiar I thought my heart would burst. "It's me, Sarah. My name is Alina." I shattered. A sob ripped free, my hands shaking so violently I had to clutch the frozen ground to keep from collapsing completely. "Alina," I whispered reverently like a prayer. "Alina, it's you. You're really here." "I promised I'd come soon," she said gently. "I am sorry it took so long, but Sarah, I've always been with you, even in silence." My tears blurred the world, hot tracks freezing on my cheeks. I can't believe." "Believe it," she said firmly. "You're not alone anymore, Sarah. I'm here now." I pressed my palms to my eyes, shaking my head. The implications of this was too much, too overwhelming to bear. Does that mean I can shift?" "Not yet," she admitted, her voice tinged with a hint of melancholy. "My strength isn't fully restored. I can't bring us into wolf form just yet, but my voice is here. My guidance, my bond with you, and that's enough for now." I let out a shaky laugh, half sob, half hysterical relief. "Enough, Alina? It's everything. Do you know how many nights I've prayed just to hear you? To not feel so empty?" A pause, soft but heavy with meaning. "I know. I felt your loneliness. I felt every time you reached for me in the dark, and I hated that I couldn't answer. But Sarah, we're together again. You're not empty anymore." I curled forward, clutching myself, as the enormity of it overwhelmed me. For years I'd walked with silence in my veins, hollow where half of me should have been. And now I'd found my missing piece. Even if she was fragile, even if she wasn't whole yet, she was here. She was mine. "There's one thing you must understand," Alina continued softly. "No one else can know of my existence. For now, I'm only for you. I know how badly you want the world to see you as something other than broken, but until I'm ready to reveal myself, you must keep me secret. Promise me, Sarah." I nodded instantly. In that moment, I would have done anything she asked of me. "I promise. I won't say a word. I don't care if they never know. You're here, Alina. That's all that matters." Warmth filled me, a ripple of comfort that spread through every vein, thawing places I hadn't realized were frozen. "Good. We'll grow stronger together, and when the time comes, I'll let the world know I'm here. Until then, just listen. Just trust me. We'll survive this." I laughed through the tears, a breathless, broken sound. Survive this? Alina, with you back, I feel like I can survive anything. She chuckled in my head, a low, affectionate rumble that filled every hollow space inside me. That's my girl. The forest stretched quiet again, but this time it wasn't suffocating, not empty. The silence was filled with her, with us. For the first time in my life, I wasn't walking alone.